Turn your speakers off on your iPad.
It is off.
Turn your speakers off on your iPad. What's that not working? All right, we're live tonight at 6:30 with Frankfort Frankfort Today. Tonight we got Kyle Thompson with us. We're going to talk about the Senate Bill 220, which
I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know anything about that.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear. Oh, there we go. Now we'll hear Kyle.
I didn't. Is that what we're talking about tonight? I wasn't prepared.
You're not prepared?
No.
Anybody who knows you know that is an absolute untrue statement. I don't have the means in which to produce all the data that you probably have with you. But anyway, we're going to talk about Senate Bill 220. A lot of chit chat going on around about that. A lot of legitimate concerns. A lot of good questions are out there. A lot of bad information. A lot of good information. So we're going to try to get some of that out there. We have no time limit on tonight.
Anybody that knows me knows that's a problem.
We know that that's
It could
a
be
mistake.
a long one.
It could be 30 minutes, but more likely it's going to be a Joe Rogan length podcast. But if you have questions, do post them in the chat. We will try to get to them, depending on how many are coming through at any given time. We may or may not be able to get to all of them, but we'll do our best to get to them.
And we want questions
We want it, yeah.
Yeah.
because we got
absolutely.
Commissioner Thompson here, and we're going to hold his feet to the fire like
gonna
we
hold-
always do to make sure that we get a truthful answer.
Right.
I hope you will.
And there are no we have set no rules. There are no questions that cannot be asked. There's no topic that we won't discuss as long as it's pertaining to Senate Bill 220.
Please ask your questions.
Yep. Anything's on the table and anything's eligible to be asked, and Kyle will answer those to the best of his ability and as completely as possible, barring anything that might be a breach of some responsibility that we may or may not be aware of. But I don't think there's anything.
No, there's not. I mean,
There's really nothing. I mean, Kyle's not. I mean, you're not held to any kind of anything when it comes to the creation of bills and all. And that's kind of what I thought was really neat about this whole process was you're not obligated to work with a sitting senator to make change in legislation. You're not obligated or compensated. If you want to talk about that, how this whole process started, because I thought that was very interesting.
So I mean, I will first say that when Senate Bill what ended up becoming Senate Bill 220 was originally discussed, it was in October of 2023, so about 4 months ago. That was the first that I became aware of any of the information. And in December of last year, I actually wrote, sponsored, and pushed through a resolution on the issue in support of the Frankfort Plant Board, because one of the main issues was that the Frankfort Plant Board, there was a fear that the Frankfort Plant Board itself or portions of it could be sold off. And that was actually what was the original discussion. I think if anybody saw any of the commercials and things of that nature.
Well, if you go back to the commission meetings where Senator Williams and the representatives of Frankfort Plant Board were there, that was one of the things. If they sold that off, they would lose just from the telecom like 70 jobs. I think keeps coming to mind. I could be wrong on that exact number.
It would make a huge difference with regard to income as well, for the revenues for the plant board.
Let's clear one thing up for sure. Never was. Tell me if this is true or false, because this is what I've been told. Never was it thought of in the bill or in any of your discussions with Senator Williams that the entire Frankfort Plant Board would be sold.
That's a correct statement. There was never a discussion or even an intent that the electric and water side of the plant board would be
Anything.
It would even be considered for sale.
Mm-hmm.
The issue and the concern was the telecom side, and what what everyone needs to know is that under the statutes of the state of Kentucky, every municipality is required to make sure that its citizens have, every incorporated and unincorporated, has to have electric and water for its citizens. Now, in some places they've done a good job.
Eric, spinning.
In some places they have done a good job. I'll wait and see if
Make sure
it's up on mine. I don't know if
You got it?
That's live.
yeah. So they in some places of the state, Frankfort, we have a great water and electric plant board. Other places, maybe Martin County, has had some issues with their water and things of that nature. And I think we have to first say that the Frankfort Electric and Water Plant Board that has been in effect for the last 80 years and is now doing an amazing job here in Frankfort, they have a significant history with this community. One in which I think it's important that we first take a step back from all of these, Senate Bill 220 and everything else, that they are an institution here in this community. Every first and 15th of the month, you'll probably see something on Facebook, somebody complaining about my internet's not working, or, why did I get why is the Kentucky game not playing? But when it comes right down to it, there are people at the Frankfort Plant Board that are amazing humans. And I want to set that out from the get-go. I can talk about my friend Josh and my friend Dave and, my friend Brandon and, all of these people who are amazing humans. And when there is a storm or there is an ice storm, or I can think specifically March 3rd of 2023 when we had a windstorm here, 90 to 100 mile an hour winds that whipped through Anderson County and Franklin County.
Yep.
And which is why everyone in Frankfort has a new roof. I think Dynamic Restoration probably made a killing, and all the other roofers in town. But the night of that storm, I distinctly remember talking to my buddies who are electric and cable guys and water guys. Brian Bourne on the other side of that. Those guys work tirelessly, and they don't get special, recognition. They don't get, nobody, says, thanks linemen for, being up there in those neighborhoods that don't have, they don't have underground utilities. They have overground. So those guys are up there and, while in bucket trucks and things that are dangerous. I mean, I would not want to be up there, but these guys work their backsides off, guys and ladies work their backsides off. And I don't ever have to worry that if there's a problem with, either at my office or at my house, whatever utility it is, they are going to fix it and they're going to be on it immediately. In fact, I know, and Craig, you and I talked to at one point. We talked to some the road crews here in town, and the plant board is very similar, and that they are prepared ahead of time.
Yeah, the state road crew.
Yeah. And so they are prepared ahead of time. They know what's coming and when it's coming, and I remember talking to some of the water guys when they had a water main break about 6 months ago, and I remember how chilly it was. It was like a September night, and these guys were standing in water for 8 hours, fixing a water main break, and these are great people that work there. Okay, and I'll go all the way up to the top people. One of the most interesting lunches I've ever had was with Gary Zing when he just asked to go out and.
And who's Gary Zing?
Gary Zing is the CEO of the plant board at this point. And he just wanted to sit down and talk to me about, who I was, who he was. And I had an amazing lunch with Gary. And I got to learn a lot about him and him growing up in China and things of that nature. And he's a very fascinating human. And I still consider him a friend. And I appreciate everyone there, all the way down to the PR side, Kathy Lindsay and everyone else there. And I think they know that if there is something that I can ever do to help them, I'm going to do it. So,
well, let me interrupt.
Sure.
Were any of those guys you described before we get too far into something else, were their jobs ever in danger of Senator Williams' bill?
When it comes to the telecom side, I would say that their their jobs were potentially, the guys who deal with the internet, telephone, things of that nature. There's the potential that portion of the company could be sold off to a Comcast or something of that nature. Now, I will also say
with whose approval?
With the city of Frankfort's approval,
City Commission.
the city commission would have to approve that,
Right.
And you have to ask yourself, what city elected official would ever vote for that,
Ever.
right?
Yeah.
It's not. First of all, the state can't come in, and that this is where we get into a little bit of the misleading aspects of some of these commercials. When they come in and say the state is trying to sell off Jay Williams from Verona, who's not even from Frankfort, is trying to sell off the plant board. Well, the state can't sell off the plant board, okay? The plant board is a municipal utility that in 1999, the city of Frankfort essentially voted to allow them to become their own nonprofit corporation. And they are the only utility in the state of Kentucky that is treated that way. So when people say, we're different here in Frankfort, boy, we really are different,
Right.
Because it's unique in that aspect. But the other thing that has to be taken into consideration that even if the city commission wanted to sell off the telecom portion because we wanted to build a convention center, that was one of the fears that I heard a lot of. First of all, they'd have to vote to do it in public. They did it. And then each of the people that work for this organization on the telecom side would likely receive employment from the entity that's already there. Now, that's still not a good thing. We don't want to lose the local control of that. I'm just saying that from a reality standpoint, if that were to happen, I don't know that those people would be out of a job, immediately.
The unemployment effect of that would be very, very low.
It would be very, very low.
Because all those guys are skilled and
they are
are employable elsewhere.
They are. But the reality is that was never going to happen. Okay, so that aspect was
right. Well, it's not like that someone, it would have, AT&T would have came in, threw in an offer, and under the cover of darkness, you wake up the next day and AT&T now owns your.
That's correct.
Everything would be. It would have to be above board public.
Not like the Colts moving to Baltimore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But to Kyle's credit, right now, Eric, we're getting answers to questions on just the very beginning.
Right.
That no other politician in town would be this frank. Because when I asked if anybody's job at the plant board was in danger, most would pussyfoot around it. But Kyle went directly to what was brought up in the very beginning.
Right.
And because of that very fear that, okay, let's say it's not all 350, but essentially it could be. But let's say it's the 71, 75, 100 people that are on the telecom side. I wasn't going to risk that.
Let me interrupt on there, too. It was never, tell me again if I'm wrong so we can do this for a second time.
Yep.
There was never any fear of the entire plant board being sold. Not in anything Senator Williams put out.
No.
It was
There
never
was not.
brought up in topics. He never said it.
He has never said that. He never said it in private to me either.
Yeah, because
because that is something that's been pushed.
Correct.
We're not for sale. Well,
You're right. You're right.
the entirety was never up.
It wasn't. But even with that,
And it
fear,
wasn't a forced. And like you said,
Yeah.
from the state, it doesn't matter what. Well, I won't say it doesn't matter what, but with the proposed legislation, had Jay passed it as it is or as it was, because we're going to get into all that too. The state couldn't have come in and said, "Okay, you're done. You're for sale."
No, and the reality is that when I say we, the city appoints that board to begin with. So I mean, there is at least some tangible link to the control of that board, right? So even if the plant board decided, hey, we're going to sell ourselves, I don't know why they would do that. It would still have to be through the individuals that the buck would have to stop somewhere, and that would be with the city commission. But getting back to that initial question, that fear was, and what was told and what countless times we heard over 4 months was that, we're not for sale. And the entire plant board was never, there was never a for sale sign out in front of that. But there was the concern, even if not said publicly, that, well, we could lose, at least a large portion of our revenues, and we could lose, 75 jobs that are being provided here. And, some of those jobs are not linemen. Some of those jobs are administrative, so it affects those individuals as well. And
and when you call in and you get that friendly voice that gets you over to telecom or over to electric, wherever you need to be, those people are supported by all aspects of the plant board, not just those administrative people aren't always just electric, aren't always just water or telecom. So when you take that huge chunk of budget and profit out, it impacts. There's the ancillary effects of other people besides just the telecom folks.
Yeah, it is,
and that was a big concern.
And it was, and and one of the things that was said to me, from an executive is, if you take away telecom, we're going to have to go down to like 1 or 2 people in human resources total, and of course that's a concern to me because if I know how important those jobs are, and if we lose one job in Frankfort, that is a crisis to me.
Yes.
That's something that's very important to me because I genuinely, there's 2 things that I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose jobs, and I don't want to raise taxes. Okay, and we'll get to that second aspect in a second here. So when you ask, how did all this come about? Well, the idea that we could lose one job was enough for me to take my own personal time and go see Senator Williams.
Yeah, so let's wrap this up.
Are we done? You said that
no.
You said you were going to go.
Yeah, you're out of time. No, let's repackage this.
Yeah.
So, and restate where we're at. So, we went from the very beginning with the talk before the bill even came out, because we had Senator Williams on here when there was only 2 articles out. There was no legislation out. There was no draft bill. There was nothing for anyone to see. And the fear was losing jobs. We're going to lose jobs. We're going to lose jobs.
Lose the plant board.
And lose the plant board as a whole.
And the false rumor of the whole plant board's for sale. So now, from that point forward, we know that that's not possible. So let's talk about what you've done over the last several weeks to help protect
Timeline.
a timeline for you help protect the jobs at Frankfort Plant Board and the interest of the community.
So in December, I proposed a resolution. Senator Williams had come to talk with the city commission, and I then drafted, proposed, and we passed a unanimous resolution in support of the plant board. That language is in the city record. If anybody wants to go look, it's there. That language specifically says unwavering support, and that my support has never wavered for the Frankfort Plant Board for every member there, including if it was one job or 75 or all 350.
And that meeting should still be on Facebook, able to be seen today.
It is. You can actually go to the YouTube. You can go to the city YouTube page, and you can look up the city commission members on. Actually, it's the Cable 10 web YouTube page. So when I made that resolution, I knew that I was potentially setting myself up for going head to head with my own party. I had recently announced that I was going to run for the state house, and I knew that I was going to have some potential issues related to bumping heads with our senator, the man who represents us in the Kentucky Senate. And that was not my intent, was to butt heads. My intent was to get on top of the mountain and say, this is a mountain that I'm willing to go to battle with. And what I mean by that is not just throw out platitudes, not to say, this is what Senator Williams needs to do, not to put out videos against Senator Williams or Facebook posts. I was going to actually meet with Senator Williams, and I was meeting with him as not just a city commissioner, but also as an individual who has lived in this city my whole life. I've used the plant board services for my whole life, and I have a lot of friends that work there. And when I go in to talk to Senator Williams, I'm thinking about my friends and their families more than I'm thinking about myself, because I'm gaining nothing out of this. I have set up a head to head with our senator here because I want to protect these individuals. That's all I wanted to do, and so when that occurred, Senator Williams and I, around Christmas time, we both said, when the language is drafted, then we can talk. Because until then, it's hyperbole to say that what they're doing is.
Did you have preliminary discussions, phone calls, meetings prior to the bill being written? Like, when did you start engaging with Senator Williams?
The first time I engaged with Senator Williams was after he appeared at the City of Frankfort meeting. I texted him and said, before you drop any of your, before you propose your bill on the Senate floor, will you allow me to see it and see what the actual intent is behind the bill? And he said, sure, I'm happy to do that. And he said, I want to make sure that you understand where I'm at. And I said, I want to make sure you understand where I'm at. And in fact, at the Franklin County Republican meeting in January, I was very lucky and thankful to be asked to speak there. And Senator Williams was there, and he said why he was proposing this bill. And I stood up that night, and he and I had a back and forth that was very cordial, but at the same time, I made it very clear what my concerns were. And I think at that point, running the risk of potentially losing the folks in that room, I was able to, at least at the end, get everyone to understand that it's these jobs that I'm worried about. It's the end game of what happens with these jobs. So that was the lead up, if you will. When Senator Williams had actually had the language drafted, there was language in there that was continuing concerns for me because of this potential of losing these jobs or the sale thereof. Okay. So Senator Williams and I decided that we would meet. I think we probably met, 4 or 5 times, 6 times. And some were for lunch, some was for dinner, a couple times in his office. But every time it was focused solely on this issue and this bill and this language. And every time I went to him and said, this language can't be in here because this is the potential problem with this language and how it would affect individuals, he removed it almost every time. In fact, there's a couple times where I came to him and said, I think there's a constitutional problem with this, that it wouldn't pass constitutional muster.
Yeah, you said that you had 2 whole sections struck out.
I did. I had 2 entire sections struck out. And one section was dealing specifically with the valuation for the intent of potential sale of the of any portion of the plant board, but more particularly the telecom section. And so that was important to me that was struck out. And that, as I sat there, he took a blue pen and actually just crossed it out and said, "Fine, we'll take that out."
So, I want to stress this. Prior to the onset of these conversations, are you and Senator Williams friends, buddies? Do you call each other on the phone?
I had never met Senator Williams until about a month before his primary election, and we met each other at a local party meeting, and it was not a fun night for me at that.
I remember that.
I think you were there.
I was there,
and he followed me out, and we talked in the hallway, and that was when things started to turn around for me as well, because I think at that point there was a lot of, is Kyle in this for himself? Is it about his own image or anything else?
Ego.
And my own ego.
Was this your all's meeting, Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. It was Frank.
It
It
was
was the other one.
Yeah.
You were there.
You were there.
Yeah, no, I was trying to figure
Yeah.
which one it was.
And I asked that because I wanted to spell. There's been a couple of comments on Facebook that, oh, it's political favors. It's,
Remuneration.
yeah, remuneration. It's not like you and Senator Williams are like Craig and I, who've known each other for 30 years, and if I call Craig up and need something, he'll do it. You have a casual meeting, just two guys at a local political party meeting. It's not like you have a history. It's not.
No.
Yeah,
like-
y'all don't casually go out to
Yeah,
lunch.
yeah. It's not
No.
like you have him on speed dial and he'll take your call at midnight.
No.
And that's important through all of this whole thing that we might get into later.
I might have talked to Senator Williams a grand total of 30 times in my life, and that's every phone call, every long conversation we may have had in person. It wasn't. I mean, I couldn't tell you what his wife or his kids' names are. I mean, honestly, it's not because I don't care. It's because it's all business when we talk, and there is absolutely no kickback or remuneration or scratching backs, things of that nature, because I didn't know him, and he actually knew that I actually supported someone else originally for the position he ran for, and once he was elected, I'm more than happy, just like I am with everyone else, to respect those people who are in office and to give them the respect they deserve. But on this particular issue, I wasn't going to take, no, I don't have time as an answer. And I didn't have to. I mean, he was willing to meet with me, and he told me, just like he told everybody else. I think, Craig, he may have told you and Eric when he was here, I'll talk to anybody about this.
Right.
If you want to come to my office and talk to me, come and talk to me.
And he was receptive to having conversations about this legislation. He was receptive to changes that make sense.
He was, and he was also receptive.
And it didn't cost anything to do it.
No, and he was receptive even when I came to him with, here's the statutes and constitutional issues that I may have. He was receptive even before I had to show that. He was like, I trust you.
We got our first question. Susie asked, and I don't know if this is more for Senator Williams or for you, but maybe you can address it. What I hear from plant board employees, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What does Senator Williams see as broken? Sorry if you address this in a podcast.
Sure.
Don't ever be sorry. Ask us these questions tonight, because we want to get your questions answered tonight.
Yeah. First of all, Susie, thanks for the question. I don't think that Senator Williams actually I will say this.
I know.
What I will say is I don't think Senator Williams necessarily thought anything was broke. Okay, that's the first thing we have to put out there. The thing is that here in Frankfort, we like to say that we're a little different, right? And that is absolutely the case when it comes to the Frankfort Plant Board. Of all the municipalities and all the municipal utilities in the state of Kentucky, the Frankfort Plant Board is the only one that is treated the way that they are and have been treated the way that they are. And there's reasons for that. When the law was created, that was a bad law. It allowed for no oversight by the municipality, no oversight by the Public Service Commission.
Define municipality, please.
So a municipality is either your city or county government, and if you have a municipal division, that'll be your police, your fire, your EMS, also your, in this case, it'd be your utility. And the city of Frankfort in 1942 created the Frankfort Electric and Water Plant Board, and so. And that was not the original name. It's escaping me, but it became what we now know as the Plant Board. And over time, in 1946, they created certain regulations that required municipalities to handle their utilities a certain way, so that there was some oversight. And like I said, in 1999, the city voted to essentially wash their hands and go forth and be free. Go forth and prosper plant board, and that was the city's choice, and that's great. The problem with that is that the oversight issue is one thing. The other thing is you have a political bent in there, and what that means is you only have a mayor that's appointing the individuals to that board, and the county. If you live in the county, you have no representation at all.
When you said because I want to get into the nitty gritty, so we can get to. When you said the mayor appoints, is that with city commission approval or not?
It is, but as anyone who has seen any city commission meeting, at least in the last 3 years, and prior to that, when Mayor May was in position, very rarely do individuals not get approved. You need 3 out of 5 votes, and that's very easy to attain. And so that was a concern, because if you have a mayor that has certain either leanings, or if you have a mayor that has certain friends or individuals that they want to put on a particular board and may not have necessarily any experience, then they can be appointed. That's not what we have right now, and let me be clear about that. Everybody that's on the plant board right now, as it stands, are all quality appointees, and I think the mayor did a fine job. But we may not have the same mayor in a year, and we may not have the same mayor in 10 years. And the same goes for the plant board. We may have individuals that are running the plant board that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart. Here, I think we have both. I think we have, at least a good appointment to the plant board, good appointments to the plant board itself. And then I think you have individuals who are running the plant board that are all quality individuals. The issues that you have there is that what happens when you don't? I mean, we recently, not too long ago, we had the plant board, members of the plant board suing the city of Frankfort and the plant board, and the city was paying for, we were all paying for the same attorneys.
And that wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't. And this would correct some of those issues, because there would also, this creates a 7-person board and gives representation to the individuals who live in the county. And that, over 40% of all of their services are in the county. And so because of that, they'd have at least 2 individuals. And if they continue to grow, with their amounts of services they provide, then there would be more and more appointees. And the way that works is those appointees under this statute, and I think it's important that we get into the bones of this statute.
Yeah, I've got the bill summary here. We'll go through those line by line.
But under this would require the nominees to come from local organizations, and your chamber, your development corporation, and then your local development corporation, a municipally run development corporation.
Yeah.
So like a KCDC.
Like the Bluegrass ad, something from the third one's a Bluegrass ad.
Yeah.
A local ad district.
Yeah. So the idea that there was no problem, so we didn't have to solve, you didn't need a solution, wasn't necessarily the case. Okay. There was an issue, and one of those issues was oversight. The other issue is every other utility in the state pays an ad valorem payment in lieu to the local schools, essentially to the taxing district, but it goes to the local schools. The lion's share of it does. And Frankfort is the only one out of all of those municipal utilities that has never paid that amount in 80 years. And so 78 years. So again, and I know that the next question that came up after this language came out and after we worked on it was, well, now there's a $3 million tax. That, again, is misleading and not the case, and nothing in this language actually creates a tax. But
can we go back one
Sure.
on what you said about the payment in lieu,
Sure.
the pilot thing? The plant board's response was, we're paying that through free services to the schools.
That's correct.
Broadcasting the ball games, track meets, all the different things that they do.
Well, yes. However, I will say, and the plant board's argument is twofold. One, we provide free internet to the schools, which isn't actually all that accurate when you dig into it, because 90% of the funds that they provide for the release of, or the allowance of them to use internet services is paid back by the Kentucky Department of Education.
And it's collected from where?
And that's collected from your from state revenues.
Your phone
Oh,
bills.
that's right. Yeah, your
phone
well, it
bill.
is, but at the same time, that's line itemed in the state budget,
And that money goes to the State Board of Education,
and then the state board of
which
education,
reimburses the schools.
the schools, which turns around and reimburses the plant board
Yeah.
at 90% at a 90%
So
rate.
are they charging? I know you've looked at a lot of their. Are they charging the school and then getting that money refunded, or are they not charging the school?
They are not charging the school, and then they're receiving the funds back. Is the way that I have seen it. Now, of course, there's always even in my business, even if you say I'm not charging you anything, I still have there's a cost to me as an individual. So that money that they receive is help covering that cost. But one of their arguments has always been, we're already giving free internet to the schools.
Yeah, and that Eric and I found that terminology called E-rates
Yes.
in statute or something. We
Well,
talked about it one
it'll
night,
be on everybody. Yeah, and it's on everybody's phone bill.
but it's under some legalese kind of crap. But it's it's E-rates,
Yeah.
E-rates, and I've asked Senator
There's a
Williams
tax on your cell phone bill that,
for damn near everything.
well, that specifically goes.
To
A
the
portion
schools.
of that goes to the schools for this specific
this, yes.
purpose.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm not enough in
So
knowledge.
Well,
of
because I
that
was
process.
kind of confused with that because I know, after we dug into that a little bit and better understood how that money flows from your phone bill or cell phone bill to the state board, and then to the Board of Education, and then to the school, and ultimately to the provider. For me, it didn't make sense why Frankfort Plant Board would give free if there's money that all of us as citizens of Franklin County are paying for every phone line that we have, that we're paying into the state that's specifically earmarked to come back to the utility or internet provider to cover those services.
Well, and I think that's part of the. I think that's part of the problem when you start digging into the, but we do this, but we do that kind of arguments that get thrown out there, and instead of just saying, "Hey, our schools are struggling financially anyway," what's a couple $100,000 to them, but by saying we already provide services that are valued at X or Y dollars. You then beg other questions, and I'll just hit on another one very, very quickly. I appreciate the fact that as a beloved Flyer alum, I love the fact that the plant board is at every football game and in basketball game, and they cover volleyball matches and all sorts of things now, and they do an amazing job with great quality.
Football games are fun as heck to watch.
They really are, but they're fun to watch at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year, Franklin County, for the first couple games, didn't have home stands, and they had the stands put up. But over the last few years, Franklin County, who has won 4 straight regional championships, is now struggling because they have 40% less attendance at their games, which is a testament to how good the productions are.
How good they're doing.
It is, because at the end of the year, a lot of people are saying, I can sit in my leather chair at my house and it's not 10 degrees outside.
But we need to be. It's the weather.
It is.
It's probably global warming's fault.
It probably is.
But we need to get the fans in the stadium.
We do, or the reality is, the plant board is making money off ads during those games. They're making money off sponsorships during that game, and they pay nothing to the schools for the loss of attendance or them producing. Just like if, CBS were to come to UK and shoot a ball game, UK gets a part of the ad revenues that comes there, and to get people to not sit at home as well. So I think there's a disconnect there, because the school's losing out. If you're losing 40% of your money, and even if it's $5 a pop, and you're talking about several thousand people each game that are there.
Guilty.
And I'm the same way, and I'm the biggest fan there is, right? So that's one issue. but again, I don't think we need to be, dollars and cents here and there. That's not where I think we need to, because David Columbia and those guys, they do just an amazing job with their productions, and I don't want to get into that piecemealing aspect of it.
Right.
Too much in details.
But
Because they do a fabulous job.
they do an amazing job. But
I mean, it's as good as watching ESPN.
it's
Literally.
better. And I will say that because of that, that is what made me dig in a little bit more about afterwards when they started saying, well, you've just created a tax on us. And so at that point, that's when we had to start looking at the language. And I know you want to get into
it was
each of that.
a $3 million tax is what they're saying.
It was, and it wasn't an up. The statement was not. It is up to $3 million.
It's
The statement
$3 million.
is it's good. There's $3 million that we're going to raise a
Eric, you
tax
want to
on
pop
the
this
people.
one up right here? Yeah, because when I saw that commercial, I immediately got on the phone and called Senator Williams.
And then you called me and said,
I
"Did you know
was
that?"
about ready to raise hell for but then I found out the truth, and you can see that says stop new taxes, say no to Senate Bill 220. The analysis is grim. A $3 million tax increase on the people of Franklin County and a provision that attempts to prevent the plant board from communicating with its customers on future tax increase proposals. Those are some pretty strong adjectives.
They are.
And $3 million, it doesn't say less than, it says $3 million.
No, and that's what
So layperson reads that, it says
absolutely.
plant board's getting ready to throw some kind of another utility tax.
Here we go,
on us.
another rate increase.
Yeah, another, which would be, they disguise it as a fee or a tax.
I think I was told that it was going to be actually line itemed on people's bill as the Senator Williams and Kyle Thompson tax is the way that
And I called Senator Williams and he
for
said,
retribution.
for retribution.
yeah, and
for
I called
raising
Senator
rates.
Williams and he said, absolutely not. I don't know where this is coming from. There's nothing in that bill that proposes a tax increase.
So regardless
Absolutely
of the $3 million, whether it's more or less, which I think you've mentioned earlier that it's not actually going to be that much. It's not a tax.
It's not a tax. And
It's in lieu of, I guess, property taxes and stuff that they're supposed to be. Ends up being a net profit tax, even though they're nonprofit, kind of sort of like.
Yeah, there's two things to take into consideration, and I won't dive too deep into this, but in 1999 when they were given this free reign, the plant board, and hear me when I say this, the plant board became a nonprofit organization for their capital projects, which is where a majority of their assets, I guess you would say, their tangible assets are held.
Wait a minute. I want to make it. David Columbia is actually watching. He said, "Hold the phone there, buddy. Incorrect on the high school sports. Cable 10 buys the broadcast streaming rights from KHSAA, and that money goes back to the schools participating."
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David.
You filled a huge missing link there.
Yeah.
So
I will say this.
we were wrong on that. So money goes to KHSAA and then comes back to the participating teams.
Let me clarify what I'm saying here then. For example, if KHSAA receives that funding, or what's the other NHSA, or the other one that does the streaming games when they're out of town playing on playoffs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Franklin County doesn't receive any of those funds, and I specifically asked Coach James and others, other coaches, how much money do you receive into your funding from plant board games being broadcast, things of that nature, and what I have been told is that none of that money actually makes it back into the line item funding of those programs. Now, it could go to the KHSAA, and I know the KHSAA, provides funding to schools and to districts. I understand that. But if we're talking about checks and dollars going directly to the schools
that benefit our kids
that
and our
benefit
community.
our kids and our community, there is not a dollar for dollar equality there. Okay, so you may be, and I know David's right, but what I'm saying is that the 40% of the people who are not there, that amount is not being reproduced on a dollar for dollar basis.
Like when CBS buys the SEC football games,
Correct.
that money doesn't go back to the SEC.
No, it goes directly to the schools.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Well, does it go to the schools or I know the bowl receipts do.
Well, that's why we
'Cause
created.
you worked at UK for
that's
30
why we
years.
but that's why we created the SEC network. Remember?
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
So the
and
issue,
then ESPN bought
and
it.
then we turned around and we divide that evenly because we want everything to be nice and socialist.
And just as FYI, Kyle worked for UK Broadcasting for around 30 years.
Thanks for showing my age, but yes,
Yeah,
30 years,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. 'Cause
But I will say, and again, David's absolutely correct, and I need to be clear. The plant board pays money for the rights to shoot that. Do not deny that. What does not get offset is the amount of those individuals who actually are not coming to the game and watching the game on Cable 10. So if you're in Corbin, and they may have 2,000
Florida
or wherever wherever it is, they may have very few people that come to their games to begin with. But that money goes to the KHSAA, and then that money is paid out to all the schools. But it doesn't replace anywhere near the amounts of money that's lost.
Well,
by the
anytime
schools.
money changes hands, it waters down. Right?
Oh, of course.
And I remember seeing during the football games, especially the playoff run, many people posting, "Get out of your house and get here to the field. We need to root these boys on."
Yeah, I mean, I did a couple of lives on that because we needed to get some people down there, but
But we're
and again,
digressing.
and we are,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that David and those guys know. I'm not denying that there are amounts paid. I'm saying that there are not amounts that are going directly to those schools. So that being the case, when we talk about the taxation issue, this $3 million tax that everyone has started, burning up my city email, it is specific in nature. The language that's in there, that there's no tax in there. There's no tax,
It's not
related
mentioned anywhere in Senate Bill 220.
It's not, and the hilarity of this is that the fees and the funding and everything else, even the language where they talk about, I read what Miss Kathy Lindsay said about, this is a free speech issue and everything. Those restrictions on institutional communications and things of that nature, those are already in legislation for every other utility in the state of Kentucky.
I got that quote.
Yeah, it's a massive tax increase, and that it also, is a
Leave it up there for a second.
a serious First Amendment and corporate governance concern. This has been in place. That language up there has been in place since 1990. Okay.
Well, what about the part where it says, you see Lindsay, quoting the State Journal article, and the link is at the top where it came from. That Lindsay said the restrictions bring up free speech concerns. So those are part of the bill summary that we'll get into in here in a minute. But also, when it comes to massive tax increase proposals that would hurt family budgets and businesses we serve, again, where in the bill does it say there's going to be a tax increase?
The only thing the bill says.
Because I hate tax increases. If people followed our Frankfort Today podcast, I hate the net profits tax. That's my least favorite tax of all. And I don't like any tax because I believe if we spend the money inside the town, everybody wins.
Well,
But this massive tax increase proposal, I was concerned about that.
Well, where they get that language is it says that in lieu of taxes, that an amount will be paid to the local taxing district. And again, that is paid by every utility in the state of Kentucky. If you're a for-profit utility, let's say KU or I don't know, LG&E, all those, they're paying not only the corporate taxes that go to the state, but they're also paying that local tax that's going to the schools. Franklin County schools aren't receiving any of these taxes, and they never have.
What about co-ops like Bluegrass Energy, where
They pay not only that, but they pay the tax on top of the revenues that they receive. So they're not even just paying the ad valorem taxes on the property that they own, but they're paying the revenue taxes on top of it, which we don't have local taxes on that with regard to utilities. So
Columbia Gas.
everybody, again, every single
'Cause
utility.
None of the other utilities operate within Franklin County are nonprofit, correct?
That's correct, and
So they're
even though
subject to everything that the big corporations are
Well,
subject
I'm
to.
learning a lot today.
correct, and it's not just that this is an amount of money that hasn't been paid. This is not a large amount of money. This is not $3 million. It could never be $3 million. And let me do just real quick math, okay? And I'm an attorney. If I could do math really well, I'd be a doctor. The city of the plant board has total real estate values of $30.5 million.
Where did you find that at?
That's on the PVA website. Everyone can go look. You can look up Frankfort Electric Water Plant Board. There are 3 different distinct accounts on there. Some of the properties are cross-referenced, so I had to be very careful that the parcels that I was looking at were not duplicated. And if you add all of them up, it's $30.5 million of their current value. Now, that's before depreciation. Again, I have to point that out. Before depreciation, okay? The only tax that the city has is real property, okay? Now, the county has a tangible property tax, which is your cars, okay? Because you pay. Remember, you go down to Jeff Hancock's office and
county clerk.
you at the county clerk and you pay for your cars, right? And at the end of the year, as a business, and you both know this, you all do your business taxes, and you actually value, as the business owner, the value of the tangible property you have after you have depreciated the value. Now, if you buy a computer and it's $1,000 when you buy it, in 2 years, what's the depreciated value of that computer, Eric? I mean, it's basically nothing,
Well,
right?
pretty much, yeah.
I mean, so
Depending on what depreciation
Right,
scales you take,
right.
like we did 7 years.
right. So if you do a 3, 5, 7 years,
On
whatever.
my apartment buildings, I did 27.
Well, very smart. But on the real property, if you were to take the highest amount of that property at $30.5 million, okay, and you were to put all of that in the Old City, okay, Old City is the highest
rate
tax
in Franklin County.
highest rate in Franklin County. You are looking, before depreciation, you are looking with city and county taxes of around $850,000 total. Okay, there's a big difference between $3 million and $850,000, but
Correct.
So about 3%, less than 3% total.
yeah, but at the same time, so people are going, well, wait a second now, that's still, you said there's no new tax. There's not a new tax. So let me explain how. The bill actually takes into consideration 2 things. One, saving every job, which I thought was my main goal. But the second thing that I wanted to do while I was up there was I wanted to lower everyone's rates if we could. So what we did was we, and I think you have this language up there, is that we wanted to take any net revenues, okay, the surplus, if you will.
We
all right?
don't have that up
No,
there.
I don't have
Okay.
that one.
So the surpluses of any of the Frankfort Plant Board. This is not amounts towards debt or paying your operating costs. This is extra money after you've done all that.
Gross profit.
Gross profit.
Or
Well,
net
it's
profit.
net
Net
profit.
profit.
Yeah.
Net profit.
So this is net profit.
So let's base that on some kind of real number.
Well, the plant board has already determined what their estimated net revenue is going to
It's
be
going to be for 24.
for 24.
And that number is what?
$8.5 million.
Okay. So we have $8.5 million. So far, we're taking out the highest possible tax with no depreciation. We've got $800,000 for that.
Right, but remember, this tax isn't going to go into this tax couldn't even be billed until the end of 25 because
Have they published those numbers for 25?
yes, they actually have a 5-year. You can go to the plant board website and on their in their determinations over a 5-year period. You know, they these are estimates. You know, they could be higher or lower, but I know the people who are doing these analyses. I trust them.
So for 25, what's that number?
That number was I want to make sure I have this right, but I believe that number was $4.5 million or $3.5 million.
Yeah, I don't. I know you mentioned it, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah,
And then
know.
in 26, it's $4.5 million. So you're talking about, before this even goes into effect, you're talking between 11 and $12 million of surplus revenues that the plant board is going to have. Okay, so
Based on 24, 25.
based on 24, 25 numbers that they actually put out. Okay,
So
Where
the
do they
first
put-
time that they would have to pay this would be in 25 or in 26.
it would be in 25 because
Where did you get those numbers from?
from the plant board's actual budget that is on their website.
Online budget.
Online budget. Yeah. It's their front page. I think it's page 3. It has the surplus revenues, and then if you go all the way to page, I think it's a 30-page document. If you go to page 27, it has the estimates for the next 5 years. When you look at that, so let's say that it goes into effect in 25. And of course, again, things can change, but that's the way that it is currently set up. You'd have $11 to $12 million estimate of surplus, right? The way that the language reads now is that the first thing that they can use that surplus amount on is to pay off bonds. That's what you want to do. You want your dets to be paid.
Service
That's
your debt.
current today you're talking about.
That's
right?
current today, as
Okay.
as the way that it's written. You have to pay off debt servicing. All right, so that's your bonds. That's what that language means. Okay, so this year, their bonds, they owe $440,000, or what I like to say, the same as a payment for a transit center. So $440,000 is what they owe in bonds for 2023, 2024. 2024, 2025, they owe $2 million. Okay? So I have $11 to $12 million. I have to take off $2.5 million-ish of revenues at that time. That takes me to about $8.5, $9 million. Okay? The very next thing that you can spend your money on is to go directly to lowering every single person's.
That's in the bill.
That's in the bill. That's in the bill. Now, remember, this payment in lieu is a cost of operation, okay? So let's say that cost of operation, that $800,000, we have to lower that out of that $12.5 million too, okay? Or $11 to $12 million, excuse me. So now we're at right about $7.5, $8 million left over, okay? You take that $8 million, and that $8 million has to be spread out by the 37,000 different individual accounts that are out there.
Is that like that today?
It's like that too. Well, it's not like that today. No.
That's what I meant, because
No.
it kind of confusing me
No,
a
no,
little
no.
bit.
No.
You were talking about what it's like today, but then you jumped
I'm
into
sorry.
what's in the bill.
the net
This is-
impact of the bill.
This is the net impact of the bill. Right now,
Assuming it passes.
yeah, right now there is no requirement that rates are lowered
Or that they give.
or that they give any money back
Any
to
money
lower
back.
those rates.
So right now, with that 8.4 million, whatever it was you mentioned, what happens to that money from 24 today, pre Senate Bill 2020? What if you know what happens to that money? Because me and Eric don't know. I don't reckon you know, right?
So
I mean, it goes in. Well, they're nonprofit, so at best it goes in into their funds. Because it's not nonprofit. What is nonprofit called? Extra cash.
yeah, so essentially, nonprofit only means that the individuals on the board and the other individuals related to decision making can't
So
make can't their profits can't be used to pay them extra money. That has to be part
So
of the
that
operating cost.
8.4 million will sit in there for some project next year, something like
Or
that.
5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years down the road.
At this moment, does the city commission approve any of these capital projects?
Zero.
So y'all don't approve any of those?
None.
Do you know that?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
But
that.
we have no oversight over their capital projects. And honestly,
Do you need oversight
I
over
don't,
capital projects?
I don't have the technical knowledge of, Jason DeLam, who is on there, knows about, solar energy and what could lower our costs. Fine. That's great. They have more technical knowledge
Well,
than I
let
do.
me ask it a different way then. Do they make you all aware of their capital projects?
No.
So,
As it is right now, no.
so if they want to kick off a capital project and spend whatever surplus cash they have a $10 million project.
In the
Who
city.
knows in the city or in the county? Either one. Who knows about it?
You guys know about it at the same time I do.
So reading it in the State Journal.
It's read in the State Journal.
So to get that approved, it's just
The board, their board has to approve it.
the board or whatever rules they have for spending limits within their organization.
Yes. And again, unlike every other organization, municipal or for-profit utility in the state, every other one has to go to their municipality or they have to go to the Public Service Commission. And if you have a problem with your rates, or if you have a problem with being overbilled, or if you have a problem with a complaint that you have, or if you overcharging, or any of those things, you can go to the plant board and you can lodge a complaint. But there's no other oversight of that.
So you're saying that if I've got a complaint to the plant board about the plant board, concerning the plant board,
Goes to the plant board.
I go talk to the plant board about my complaint about the plant board.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean,
That's confusing.
It's the Fox Garden hen house.
well, it is.
So
But,
I'm learning so
but,
much. I'm learning so much.
But
through
again, I
this.
want to be really clear about this. Okay,
I've never had a problem with the plant board.
I haven't either.
and the guys and ladies who are there right now, that I don't have any less faith that they're gonna, if there's a problem, they're gonna fix it. You know, if I were to have a financial issue and I were to have to call the finance department, who I know who runs that and I'm very good friends with, he's gonna figure out what the issue is, and he's gonna call me back within an hour and be able to tell me what the problem is. If I have a problem with the cable section, they're gonna call me.
Well,
So
but
that's
we
my
got to
issue.
take a look at this. Okay, we know from experience that if it's hard to find somebody in Frankfort who doesn't know somebody at the plant board in some capacity.
Well, yeah,
I mean
right.
it's almost impossible.
It's the second largest non-state
Employer.
employer in the county.
So we got to take a look at this, and we go through all this because I wanted to make this point. If you're looking at this from the outside, from a legislation perspective or a senator perspective, who hasn't felt the experience of dealing with the plant board, or know that if our power goes off at 3 a.m., there will be a truck there at 3:30.
And it's
right.
really, I'm really glad you mentioned
during
that.
the storm.
Well, and it's the perception is like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Who do you call? There's
Yeah.
no one to complain to.
Right. That can be the perception, except for the fact that when I walked into Senator Williams' office the very first time, I said, we're different because we are different. That's just how it is. Because I can pick up the phone and talk to somebody I know and get an answer. And that's the great thing about the
Can
Frankfort Plant
everybody
Board.
do that?
I mean, I would say that compared to most places, it's more likely that you can, because the plant board is service oriented and they want to provide good
they've got an
services.
emergency number. I know
They do have
that.
an emergency number, and they're
I've
great
made
about
use
getting
of
to
that
you.
once
Yep.
when our internet went out.
I mean, it's not Mayberry. I mean, you're not calling Gladys to connect you to the
Calling-
sheriff, but
we're calling local people
right, local people
that
who
live
live
in
here,
Frankfort
right,
on their help desk.
right,
Yeah.
and they're out there, as quick as they can. So that's the first thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands. So if we're talking about at most this $850,000, all of that's taken out of operations. Then you take out the bond payments, right? And then the very next thing is it has to actually go to lowering your bills. So this
This is what's in Senate Bill 220.
This is what in Senate Bill 220, not currently, but in Senate Bill 220. So when the plant board says, whoever said this, and I don't know who came up with I know they have hired a couple of PR firms, and I know that they have lobbyists. But when they put a statement out that says this is going to increase your taxes, first of all, $3 million, and it's going to make the cost of your utilities go up, both of those are wrong. They're
not true.
They're flat wrong. And I would challenge anyone that makes that statement, or I would challenge anyone that read that statement. Ask the question, why didn't they show their math? Okay? And this is the worst kind of politics that are played. This is not what the plant board did. I'm saying people that were representing the plant board.
Mm-hmm.
The worst kind of politics is when you say things like, an R or a D is doing this and it's going to cost you X, right? But they don't tell you why, okay? And they don't tell you how that truly will affect you. And that's the problem with everything that's wrong with this world is that people just throw things out there and they don't explain it.
Remember what we talked about, Eric? What was that term used?
Which one?
Scare tactics.
Oh, scare tactics.
Yeah, and what I want to make clear is that I am the last guy on the city commission or anyone running for office that will ever vote to raise your rates on your utility or a tax. I'm the guy who voted against raising your taxes last 3 times that I voted on a budget.
Plus, you weren't for the parking garage.
And I was definitely not for the parking garage.
Adamantly.
No.
Yeah, and I remember another one you said, like, as soon as we get our bills paid off, suddenly everybody wants to go out and spend their money again.
Right.
Well, it was wasn't it the day before all the city's bills were paid off? And then we encumbered, or you all encumbered money next meeting?
We received around an $800,000 payment from
ad valorem from state.
Oddly enough, a payment in lieu
Pilot.
from Governor Bashir. Thank you, Governor. That turned around and essentially balanced our budget.
Right.
Almost to the penny that we needed to be able to do that. And the very next time we go out there, it's like, paid off my credit card. Let's use this sucker. It's time to go to Vegas.
I remember you being pretty adamant in the meeting about that.
I do too.
That's the problem, is that you can have capital projects, but you have to be able to show how these capital projects are going to pay themselves off. So in this particular case, when we're talking about Senate Bill 220, if you actually take $7.5 to $8 million and you actually spread that out over, all of the accounts that they have, the 37,000 accounts that they have, and that's electric, water, and internet. But if we're talking about electric and water, then that's about $40 for every account that it will be lowered. It's about $37.80.
Or
that's every
12
month
times through the year.
That's every month. So
you've done the math on that?
I've done the math on that as well. $37.40.
Seems like 40 would be 40 per year.
No, it's 30. Take $8 million.
Math, I'm getting ready to do it.
Take $8 million and divide it by 37,000. $8 million's a lot.
$216.
Divided by 12.
Yeah, I can do that number in my head.
$18.
And if you have electric and water, it's $36 plus.
Yeah, okay. So that's
37 is not 37 households, it's 37.
37 accounts.
30
one electric and one water.
That's correct.
So it'd be $36.04.
Right.
Okay.
And of course,
each month for 12 months.
For 12
correct?
months, based on the $8 million surplus. And of course, it could be more, it could be less.
So okay, you take that $8 million, you redistribute it
So that much per year per customer.
per year per
savings.
customer. 432.
That's correct.
$432 savings per year.
So you distribute that, decrease the bill or whatever, which means the following year after that, their net revenue is going to drop.
Well,
And
remember,
it sounds like you're almost trying to zero out the net.
no, because
So the
because there's
concern for that becomes long term.
Sure.
Capital.
So there are particular laws under Chapter 96. And correct me on that if I'm
Talking about
wrong.
Kentucky Revised Statutes.
Kentucky Revised Statute that deals with utilities, and utilities have certain amounts that they can put into different funds, sinking funds, funds for capital improvements, things of that nature. And there's so much that they can put in those. So limiting their amounts, no, those amounts have already been set aside and taken out of their budget. This is actual revenue surplus. This is after everything has been accounted for. Okay. So couldn't they put that money in other places? Sure, they could invest it in the stock market for all we know, but right now we don't know anything about it. But we know that the net revenue with this bill would go to lower individuals' actual accounts. And if you have electric and water, you could save up to $400 a year with this. Now, that's not a $3 million tax increase. Now, is there the possibility, and this is the next question that comes up, and I've had a lot of people ask me this, is there a possibility that, the plant board doesn't have any revenue that in a particular year, and because of, say we have 10 terrible storms, right, and FEMA doesn't pay any money back, which is very unlikely.
Yeah, not going to happen.
But let's say that happens, and the plant board has no revenues to be able to pay the money that the lion's share is going to go to the schools. Remember, this is not going to the local governments. It would be incredibly hard for me to believe that would happen when you have 37,000 accounts that you would, and growing. But at the same time, I would think the next thing you would do is want to assist the city and the county in growing the economic development and bringing in large corporations, because that's where real money is at when it comes to power
Right.
and electric.
Yeah, because I went to Georgetown to visit my son Thursday, and went to Shelbyville to visit my daughter and her husband today. And thing I noticed was all these giant warehouses being built, not already built, being built. And one of them in Shelbyville today, where my son-in-law works, is an aerospace engineering company.
Did you know that aerospace is the number one exporting revenue maker in the state of Kentucky?
and
Well,
it's
they're-
all in the western part of the
Aerospace.
Most of it's in the western part of the
Yeah,
state.
and the addition they're building is twice as big as the two they've already got. So it must be a growing industry for them to expand that much.
GE's been building turbines in Kentucky for a long time.
Yeah, but I was just
But anyway,
so if we want to have growth
If you want to have growth,
with
you
the
have
plant board,
to have good schools.
how come? Well, I mean, this is a whole different topic. I don't want
It
to
is, but
why
let
in
me,
the
Well, wait a
hell
minute.
are we not having growth and everybody around us?
before we
is?
jump to that, so where does the number 3 million come from? So far, we've discussed the highest possible that we can come up with tax is the property tax of $800,000. There's one number. The other number was $8 million, about $8 million, which is the surplus cash going back. I can't find $3 million in here.
well, it's interesting because I can't either. And one of the
Because I could say that $8 million going back to the, I could call that $8 million going back to the ratepayers. We use the term ratepayers. That's the popular term for it. Going back to the ratepayers, I could see you labeling that as a tax. It's not.
It's not. It's a
But-
it's a decrease in rate.
It's a decrease in rate. But for effect, you call it, oh gosh, they're going to tax us. You're going to send that back to the. But I can't find $3 million unless
No.
they've used another number. We use I guess a combination of 24, 25. If you look at the 26, and you have $4.5 million as your starting point, and you come that you start taking that $800,000 off $4.5 million, it gives you $3.7 million after that $800,000. So that's the only place I could find the number 3 million.
So one of the fears and one of the things that has been expressed to me by folks at the plant board is that the bill is silent as to what ad valorem tax is. Well, the problem with that argument is twofold. One, statutorily, and second, constitutionally. You cannot just create a tax on one entity, right? It's not possible. You have to have a tax that's already in place.
It's pretty illegal.
It's pretty illegal. Yeah, everybody has to be treated equally when it comes to taxation.
Kyle, there's a 1% Kyle
That's right.
tax.
I mean, trust me. There's a lot of people out there that want to put that on me. But the other thing is, constitutionally, is that it would not pass constitutional muster if we said, okay, now that we have the ability to tax an entity, our plant board, we're going to put a 10% tax on you, right? I mean, it can't do that. So one of the things that in this analysis clearly that was taken into account was tangible and intangible properties. Okay.
Right.
The city of Frankfort doesn't have a tangible property tax. It doesn't have an intangible property tax.
Just ad valorem.
Just ad valorem, which is your real estate. And of course, again, ad valorem means taxation of all of the stuff you own. Okay. So, but the only ad valorem tax we have is the real estate tax inside the city.
So ad valorem tax would, for Eric's company where we're at, it taxes table.
It theoretically would tax this table
Yeah.
before
I'm
depreciation.
taxed on this table from the county, not the city.
Right.
County, okay.
And here's where that comes in. You're actually doing the valuation of your company of what the value of the table is after
Right.
you've taken all the depreciations off, right? And if you're any kind of savvy business person, which I know the people at the plant board are, you're going to depreciate the heck out of things that you've had up for 10, 15, 20 years. And what do you have just in the county, right? There are very few items that are just in the county. But even the things that are in the city would be taxed at county rates as well. But you're a business. You're going to take depreciation on all those things over 3, 5, 7, 30
eventually,
years.
a telephone pole is going to be worth zero.
If not already.
I mean, already, because they're already
Right.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So I think what happened, Eric, to be very clear on this, is that I think that this number came from how much does all of our what's the value of all of our stuff? If we were to go out and try to pawn all of our telephone poles, right? What's the value of that? And then they multiply that by the state tangible and intangible rates and the local city ad valorem, which is real estate tax. And they came up with this number that was close to $3 million. That's not how that works, okay? And the city doesn't have a tangible and intangible rate. And one of the concerns that was raised to me was, but the language doesn't say that you can't charge us for tangible, property tax within the city. You're right, it doesn't, because it doesn't exist. It says you're going to pay to the taxing district what is owed in payment in lieu of those taxes, okay?
Well, right. And if the taxing district, be it city or county, creates a tax or proposes a tax to be created, that's when you contact people.
That's when you contact people.
I'm adamantly opposed to this.
Right.
When and you and I have talked about this before, there's rules in the game that you play in. Talk of a new tax doesn't create a new tax. A piece of paper that's being proposed with legislation on it creates a new tax, and then it has to be voted for in the whole process.
And the language in 220. Go look at the language in 220. Don't let somebody tell you about it. And if
We've linked it on our Frankfort Today Facebook page.
and yes, it is. I had one gentleman last night who was very adamant that it was. I mean, it was 14 pages long. I mean, how can you expect somebody to read 14
I remember
pages?
reading that.
And the reality is that
Explain that, because I don't think people understand. So you start with a bill that
So
220 is editing, I guess is the best way to say it, or
you're either adding language to a statute or creating a statute, or you're deleting, or you are changing, amending words. Okay?
amending. That's the word I was looking
So
for.
if you have a statute that
And
has a
220 makes an amendment, right? Or
it does 220 actually 220 makes an amendment, but there is an addition. There is other additional language, but
it changes in existing.
But the additional language with regard to 220 brings the Frankfort Plant Board into the exact same treatment as every other municipal utility in the state.
Joe Citizen is reading Senate Bill 220, if they don't want to read 14 pages of legalese, politicalese, what do they look for on the bill to see the change? I know the answer, but I just want to
because you have languages that's current, language that's being changed, language that's being proposed. Explain to them how to look at that document and make sense of it.
So there are two things you need to look for. Okay, one is bold and italicized and underlined language. That is new language. If it's bold, italicized, and underlined, that is brand new language. Okay,
That's never been in there.
never been in there before. And then you also look for stricken language that has lines through it. Okay, that means the proposal is that language is in there. We're taking it all out. Okay. If you look at Senate Bill 220, the way that it's proposed, there are some sections that have one word changed, and sometimes it's
only two.
and sometimes it's his and her. Like it used to say just his. And so we added
politically correct.
and so we added and her. So
But one whole paragraph is got a paragraph of about 8 or 9 lines got took down to 2 words.
that's right. It got taken down to 2 words, but we have to print the whole thing.
Right.
So when you say, "Gosh, it's 14 pages long," that doesn't mean we added 14 pages of new law. That means that and a lot of it, most of it, we're taking stuff away.
Yeah.
Right.
That's in the statute.
Well, and that's we also got to consider that's part of transparency. If you're a senator, you're reading through your 14 pages, you know exactly what the law says now, how you're changing it, and what you're adding to it.
That's correct.
If all all those situations apply.
And then in every situation, there is a summary. There is a statutory summary that they provide as well. And Craig, if you want to, I mean, I think now's
You
probably
wanna
a good
start?
time.
You
I
wanna
think,
start?
yeah.
Well, I mean, we need to recap where we're at. So we can't find $3 million.
I wish I could find $3 million.
The bill doesn't, or the Senate Bill 220 does not create a new tax. It is telling you, the language is in there is you're paying whatever is applicable to the taxing district.
That's correct.
So if any new tax is created, the taxing district created it. Whether this is proposed, if this is proposed legislation is passed, any new taxes would have had to been created by the Board of Commissioners or
the fiscal court, or your schools,
So if those
Or the
taxes
library.
are
or
created,
library. Right.
Libraries stand alone.
Right.
I forget about them. So if there's any new taxes post Senate Bill 220,
But again,
it's not Senate Bill 220 that caused it.
No, but again, and I'll throw this out there. In 1999, the plant board created a nonprofit organization. Okay,
I meant to bring it up. Yes,
and I'll throw this out there for the attorneys for the plant board. They could take it however they want to, but nonprofit organizations used for the public interest are exempt from local taxes, and any municipally owned entity. So, say the Frankfort Parks and Recreation Department, if they created their own entity, or the Parks Foundation. That's a good example. There is a Parks Foundation here in town. That is a nonprofit. Okay, it's not taxable. Okay, so Frankfort Plant Board folks out there that are dealing with this issue, if you want to be independent and you want to say out there that we're totally independent, we don't have oversight, then yes, you're going to have a payment in lieu. If you are owned and operated and have oversight from a municipality, I would argue that you are tax exempt under the Constitution, Section 270 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and the valuation statutes of the Kentucky Department of Revenue. That's just Kyle Thompson's free legal advice.
So if they're passing a tax on to you. You joked about calling it the
Senator Williams and Kyle Thompson line item tax.
Line item tax.
Yeah,
that's not a new tax. That's not new. That's not statutorily mandated.
No.
It's not in the bill. It is not a tax.
It is not a tax.
It's
no.
not a tax. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, and
it shouldn't be passed.
Well, and if you have an $8.5 million
surplus,
it's hard to say that you're going to pass on any cost to the ratepayer. I mean, again, I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible here. And if you're going to say that this is a new tax we're going to pass on to you, then show us how.
Show me the math.
Well, just show me the math how the $8.5 million is already accounted for, and it can't be used to draw that down, and then also lower everyone's rates. So to be clear, two things that we accomplished. Every job at the plant board, every single job at the plant board will stay and remain intact as it is right now, for as long as anyone can see.
Right.
I mean, barring any business decisions made by the plant board.
Made by the plant board or the board of commissioners,
city.
right?
This was completed through the work you did with Senator Williams.
That's correct.
If you went out on your own without anybody asking you to do this.
Oh, that's
well,
correct.
Let's get to point two. What was the second point?
And point two is not only did we save every single job, 350 jobs guaranteed, regardless of whether it was Senator Williams' intent to sell off electric and water or just make the offer of being able to sell telecom. All 350 jobs are good. Second is we were able, if this language passes, to actually lower your rates of your utilities. Now, that would bring quite a big difference than saying we're going to lump a $3 million tax on top of you. So those are the two things that the bill actually does with the language that we have. Now, again, I'm not the smartest guy, okay? But I do have 22 years of legal experience and 22 years of legislative writing and interpretation. And that's the way that I interpreted it, that the reason we structured it this way. And I didn't write it, okay? There are bill writers who write these bills, and then they turn around and they say, this is the fiscal impact of these bills. And you can actually, I mean, you can go through every single thing that the bill does.
I want to do
but
that.
But one and two, all the jobs are saved, and we lower your rates.
Well, and that was the complaint, right? When we set out on this journey, we talked to Senator Williams, and apparently opened up the can of worms that started the ball rolling down the hill. Because
I honestly didn't think that there would be like turmoil after what I did. Honestly,
well, there were two articles written that were related to this, and I think
which piqued our interest.
One was a week prior to the podcast. The other one I think was two weeks. Craig said, "Let's talk to Senator Williams." I said, "You make it happen. That sounds great to me."
Mm-hmm.
So we talked to him, and that's where he talked about selling telecom. Well, on the surface, without deep diving into the financial impact, the community impact, it's an interesting concept. It's like, okay, being a technology guy, I know that industry's dropping. I know that it's a commodity industry, and he's not wrong in the fact that in time, the value of that will drop because services become cheaper. It was interesting. And like I said, it was a very high-level conversation. We hadn't done the research that you've done. We hadn't.
It was too new to do the research.
It was too new.
Yeah.
So that started the snowball rolling down the hill. That I had multiple people say, "Oh, you support him. You support killing jobs," and then
you were attacked via email and social media.
I had 3 or 4 people, multiple people make comments like
I
that.
actually had somebody that said that I bring shame upon the community.
We'll get there in a minute.
We'll
definitely get there.
We'll get to those in a minute.
And I wasn't supportive of it or against it. It was an interesting idea. It
Well, it's the concept of this podcast. We want to bring news to the public that in either a short format or like today in a long format, where you can really get into the nitty gritty, not be limited to 5 minutes like you are in a city commission meeting.
Like I said,
fiscal court.
Joe Rogan style, right?
Yeah, Joe Rogan style. But really dig into it with people like you and Senator Williams. And we also had the plant board the following week that we did about a 90-minute podcast with, so we could really dig into the information.
So we got to, and the big fear was, we're going to lose 70 jobs. So and that was the ball that we ran with from October, up until present. Maybe a week ago now, almost a week ago. That was the thing. We're going to lose jobs. You're getting your friends and your neighbors fired, or whatever language that they use.
Yes,
it varies. So you say, I love my city. I love my friends. I love Plant Board. They do me well. With zero reimbursement, with zero pay, you're not being paid to do this. You connect with Senator Williams and have multiple sit downs with him.
Can you bring that one up again, Eric? The bottom one.
The no.
Yeah, this one.
So you sit down.
We'll address those real quick before we go into the others.
So now we've moved to cheese. Now we're talking about $3 million worth of taxes that no one has shown numbers on where they come from.
Yeah, there was a pivot.
There was a pivot, a huge pivot.
Yeah,
and
they're still making you out to be the bad guy.
Well, and look, I'm an elected.
That one.
Yeah,
I'm an elected.
Okay.
I'm an elected official. I have big shoulders. I know that I'm going to say and do things that will upset one person or another person because I can't make.
That's good like that.
I can't make everybody happy. But at the same time, what I loathe about politics
is that online.
Mm-hmm.
What I loathe about politics is
6 second delay.
Is half truths or someone saying this is going to cost you, this is going to be a burden on you, and I feel like a lot of times people are essentially told that they're scared about that. There are many people, including my family, my folks who are on they are on fixed incomes, and it's scary when somebody says we're gonna add a $3 million tax on your city.
Right.
And
That's what got me really digging into it.
Of course, but the problem is that I hate that if that's truly your concern, show your math. Second of all, if it's not really your concern and you're just pivoting to because of some other issue, just be transparent and say what that issue is. And I don't know what that issue may be, but there is no $3 million tax because this doesn't create a tax. And they have had a surplus for years and years and years. It has been run very, very well. And all this does is saves all the jobs and lowers everybody's rates.
Okay. So what we got on the screen now is on the opening page of the Frankfort Plant Board, or you can click on one of the links, the furthest link to the left. I forget what it is. Now, I talked to Senator Williams today, and he said he's received some communication via this, but I understand that you have received quite a lot. And can you go into what the emails said to you, and then your response, and then what kind of third response that generated from the original sender?
So it's interesting because it's very. I will say that it's an interesting and very well planned out tactic here. If you click on my name on the site there, it'll actually bring up an email, a created email. It's a form email that just goes directly to my city email, and of the couple dozen, 30 maybe emails that I've received, I have responded to every single one of them, most of which with the same information. Some of the times I add stuff in there because
when you say same information, can you define? Sure.
So I actually show the bill and I show the surpluses and I show what the bill does, and in true Kyle Thompson-esque style, as Eric Elder will say. It's as if I get paid by the word. But I want to be completely transparent and completely thorough in my answer because I don't want somebody to ever say I wasn't clear on what something did. And so what I did is I've answered everything with the actual statutory language and the language that's already in existence regarding every other municipality, but also with the plant board's own budget numbers from their own budget. I actually took those out and put those in there. And about 50% of them, 50% of the people don't respond at all. But about 50% of the other ones will respond back with, I am very sorry. I did not know any of that. And I am sorry that I will do my own due diligence and I will look things up. But I'm sorry that I sent the email and didn't know all the information. So not a problem. I thank you for engaging.
And that's society today. Society reads the headline and they don't read the underlying article.
You get about 3-second attention span.
Yeah.
And
blame MTV.
Well, I mean, maybe, or TikTok, or
back in my day, that's where it started.
You're right. But the other thing is, it's whatever the headline is. Right. I remember when I'll just say, when you say $3 million tax, everyone goes, hold the phone. I got time before my lunch break. I can shoot an email out.
And I picked my phone up.
Yeah.
And it's very strategic. I mean, you take, what's the population of Franklin County?
Franklin County whole?
Yeah.
About 50,000.
So
28 in the city.
Yeah.
So you got about 50,000 people and $3 million. It doesn't take a whole lot of math to figure out, I will notice that increase. If you're passing that to me, I will notice that.
Hell yeah.
It's not 30 cents.
No. And the another thing that was very interesting is that a lot of folks who were sending me these emails, like their email address was like joe@AT&T.com. So I thought that was
emails.
Well, no, it was these individuals, but they don't even use the Plant Board internet service. The only thing that was
so you're
at
getting
risk
emails from AT&T customers.
For AT&T customers, I got emails from Verizon customers, people who have internet services through other utilities,
through their phone. Utility.
So and in Franklin County, we already have telecom. We already have telecom companies that are here that provide fiber services. To some extent.
They so can you give like an example of what the email? You could tell that it was obviously a form.
Yeah. So the email the
before
email,
you even went and looked for yourself.
Yeah. So the email that comes out is. It always says Commissioner Thompson. It says, I'm adamantly opposed to Senate Bill SB 220 and ask that you reverse your support of this legislation. It is a $3 million tax increase on myself and other Frankfort Plant Board customers. Why are you supporting a proposal that will simply make constituents like me pay more for basic utility services? And their tagline, no problem exists, no solution is needed. Now that's the form that goes out.
That's the canned. If you make zero effort, that's
correct.
what you're going to receive.
Just hit button, hit send, and that's what most of them are. But my favorites are the ones that when people get creative, and one of them was, you bring shame upon this community with everything you do.
Shame.
I felt like that I'm walking through the streets in whatever Game of Thrones, and they're all yelling shame at
When
me.
the Queen's
Right,
walking
the Queen's walking
downstairs.
Shame.
Yeah, and so
That's a new
kinda
thing
how-
in America now.
yeah, that's kind of how I felt. You bring shame, and
That would have been a good sound effect.
Did you reply with your thing you talked about, your lengthy reply?
I did, and at the beginning I said, I'm not really sure. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you think I bring shame upon the community, other than I worked really hard to make this happen. And you may not like the language of the bill that came out, but tell me what it is about the language you don't like. I don't know why you would have to personally attack me. But again, I'm a big boy.
So
I'm a
this
politician.
wasn't nothing to do with the bill. You were personally
Yes.
Kyle Thompson attacked like
Yeah.
Kyle Thompson
like a-
brought shame.
Right, shame.
like a cancel me kind of culture that we live in today.
Very much so. But again, I felt bad for the individuals who were all sending these, especially the folks that apologized afterwards, because they were brought to action without hard numbers, and we all look, we are all subject to this every single day. If you turn on, the news, we get these sound bites, we're going to hear that, your taxes are going to be raised on this, there's border problems, there's IRS issues, now they're going to have 87,000 IRS agents
Right.
with guns, there's riots in the streets, and we don't have any proof
Right.
of hard information a lot
Well,
of times.
and as it kind of goes with the old saying, it's like their side, our side, and the truth. There's three sides to every story, and you do, and I like the way you tell people, read the bill, just read it. It's 14 pages, and
what I
anything
did.
marked out, you don't even have to read because it's not applicable.
And the flip side of that is people say, and truthfully, look, reading statutes is hard. I had to go to school for it,
Right.
and then I had to have years of training to know exactly what I'm looking for.
Because a single word can change
Oh,
an
Shall-
entire
shall
thought.
and may
Shall
are,
and may
are,
are the-
Yeah.
are two big differences.
Shall's a big word. In,
Yeah.
in-
Yeah, they're the two biggest words in state government: shall
Yeah.
and may.
And so I understand, but I would rather people come to me and say, okay, and I've had this, explain to me what this sentence means and how you would interpret it. And so I'm able to tell them I would interpret it this way, and that's why I use that term. What I don't like, and I don't think is effective, and I don't think that it benefits anyone, is when you just say, I am sorry that you have chosen to support, this bill without any hard numbers other than a talking point. And talking points are just that. Unless you have stats and data to back it up. And look, anyone that knows me, anyone that has seen me in a city commission meeting, anyone who has met me or seen me in court, I do not go into a meeting or go into a city meeting or go into a meeting with Senator Williams without doing so much research that it would make your head spin. I don't sleep because I just do research.
Well, and I commented that to you. It was it might have been the great chicken controversy.
Yeah.
You had asked, you had asked questions,
Chickens.
and the people without pointing anything, the people that should have known the answers to the questions didn't even do the research to know the answers to the question, and that's when you said, you never ask a question that you
don't know
don't
the answer.
already know the answer to.
Correct.
And that's trial lawyer 101. You don't want to be surprised, and
And yet I was surprised when there was so much vitriol the next day that I woke up after this bill dropped. I honestly thought, like, awesome, good job, Frankfort. We've come together. The plant board needed help. We all bonded together, locked arms. We went in there and we
you protected jobs,
we protected
which was the
jobs,
complaint.
Which was the complaint. And I thought, tomorrow will be a good day. I'll be able to walk around and feel pretty great about how things have worked out in local government. And I woke up, I should have known something was wrong. I woke up with the Black Death, and that's why I sound like this. I don't have this deep voice most of the time. I don't sing bass or tenor. But when I woke up from the strep that I had at 6 o'clock that night, and I literally had 120 text messages from about 100 different people, and the emails that I had were just unbelievable. I didn't realize there was a controversy that was going on, and maybe my body knew ahead of time, but I was very, very surprised by the vitriol because
So night before you went to bed thinking you'd done
I thought
the best that could be done.
the best that could be done, and the only thing that I had been asked to do, to be quite honest with you, which was to save these. Frankfort Plant Board is not for sale. Okay,
You
boom,
weren't asked.
saved.
You weren't asked. You did this on your own.
That's correct. I mean, but
which
you know,
is a good thing.
When the commercial says, call Senator Williams, call your representatives, call your city officials, and tell them that Frankfort Plant Board's not for sale. Well,
And that's been out since like October.
it has. And
Because they published all 4 of the commissioners.
That's correct.
Now they've whittled it down to you and Jay.
Right. And so I didn't just call, and I didn't just call the other commissioners and say, hey, can we do a resolution? I did the resolution, and then I marched my happy butt up to the Capitol, which every other person in the city of Frankfort can do, and every other elected official can do. And I went up there and said, and I can tell you there were witnesses to it. When I sat down and I was sitting across the table from Senator Williams, and I said, this language has to go. You cannot leave this language in here because this scares people and it makes them think they're going to lose their job. We need to take this out so that everyone knows their jobs are protected.
So you literally reached across a table with your finger and pointed and said, this has got to go.
It's exactly what I did.
And it went.
And it went. He
Okay.
took a marker and marked it out right there at the table. And there were people in the room where it happened.
Well, and that's the thing that you had to remember is, and this is how the game works. We've talked about
sausage is made.
how the sausage is made. How the game works. Somebody or somebody's propose a bill,
That's correct.
and
I'm a bill.
Yeah.
I'm a bill sitting on Capitol Hill, right? And you come in opposing the bill. Well, you're not going to get 100% of what you want, and they're not going to get 100% what they want. And you negotiate.
But in
vote.
this case, we had 75 jobs on the line, and I didn't know that I could negotiate
Eric?
that.
Would you consider this a hot topic, this bill?
Inside of Franklin County, yes.
What about you,
100%.
Kyle? Just a big, obviously it was because you got involved. The reason I asked that question, how many other elected officials in Franklin County went up and visited
that's what I
Senator
was trying to
Williams
get
in his
to.
office or said, hey, let's get together at
Right.
X restaurant and have dinner and let's discuss this bill?
Well,
I don't know.
and that's where I was going with that.
Do you know of any
I
others?
don't, and that
I
no, that
don't.
doesn't mean that
it's
it-
not. No, I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying that we're five, and I made a post about this, so it's not like I'm just now saying it. We're 5 blocks away from the Capitol.
That's correct.
I mean, we can drive up there, park, walk in the hallway, walk up the front door, take an elevator. Second floor, we're in Senator Williams' office.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. There's versus hiring a lobbyist who doesn't live in Frankfort, doesn't know the daily minutia of Frankfort. Our elected officials do, and they could just hop in their car or ride their bicycle or walk up there and sit down with our state senator and work through these issues.
And I think a lot of times people will say, or I'll even hear, you don't have to post a picture every time you're with somebody. I do because I want people to know that I'm working for them.
Right.
And one of the complaints that we saw last night on Facebook was one of the individuals said, "Well, you could have just gone to all the other senators and House representatives and
And that's
just,
where I was trying to get on that.
and just convince them not to vote for this bill."
Right. And that's what I was saying.
That seems counterproductive, but
Right. When you're playing a game, there's a process in the game. And that was one of the exact examples was you could have tried to garner votes.
I could have
Against
if I was
it.
a Superman.
So right. So you want me to go across every county in Kentucky, try to get 50%, hope that the 50% that say they're going to vote the way I want them to vote
100
actually vote the way I want them to vote.
138 people.
Yeah. and hopefully they keep their word, because politicians never lie. None of them do. And that's not how you play that game. I need to know everything in this, what it does, what it causes, the damages, the good, the bad, the ugly, because the bill is there. The bill is, at this point, going to be voted on.
And the original language of that bill
Was bad.
was bad, but it was bad for the plant board, but it was going to pass. And
why would it pass, Kyle?
Because
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of that.
So here's the nuts and bolts of how the sausage is made. Down on Capitol Avenue. The reality is that the Kentucky State Senate does not introduce a Senate bill that they don't believe is going to, through the caucus and have support of the caucus, that they believe is going to die an ugly death, right?
And this bill is right now in the Natural Resource and Energy
That's
Committee.
correct.
So it's out of committee on committees where everything dies.
That's correct.
Once it gets out of there, you can pretty much count it done.
I could tell you that, Senator Williams, having been in the state Senate before, and knowing how things work, he's not, even though this is his first term in this realm or this administration, he knows how to get things through. The original bill was gonna not only make it out of committee, just like this one did in one day, by the way.
Right.
The
next day.
It was going to make it out of committee, and it was gonna pass. It was because look, if you're in Litchfield or you're Paducah or you're in Pikeville, all you know is that Senator Williams, who is a Republican, and there is a supermajority in both houses, can say to you, "I need you to vote for this bill." I don't care if I'm in Pikeville about Frankfort. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry
Right.
to say that, but I don't care if it is specific to an institution.
And if you're in Litchfield, you know that
you trust.
you know that you're going to, at some point in your career,
Need his
say,
vote.
"I need your vote."
Right.
Remember,
So let's talk about the supermajority. So the Republicans have a supermajority in the House and the Senate. So like in the Senate, let's say it's 30-8. So any bill a Republican that gets out of committee and gets through the hearing process, if it comes up to a vote, more than likely it's going to pass.
It's going to pass after 2 readings, and then it has to go to the.
But what if you're a Democrat in a supermajority, like say the governor's budget?
Correct.
Last year they vetoed his budget and overrode his budget, and just with a snap of a finger
And
they
that's-
passed their budget.
And that's
and
what a
there's nothing you can do about it.
and that's
right?
what a supermajority does. The supermajority has the ability to override every single time a governor's veto. The government
or other legislators.
or other legislation. Look, if the governor had received the original bill and he had vetoed the original bill and it went back to both houses, it would have been overridden. That's the reality of the situation, because they're not going to give a win to Governor Beshear.
Yeah. So in this case, with this bill and you working on this bill with Senator Williams, that's the only way
It truly was.
that it could help Frankfort Plant Board and save those Frankfort Plant Board jobs, is you working with Senator Williams to modify the language and get it passed that way,
So
because
let-
it's going to pass one way or another.
That's correct.
So let's look at this then. None of us have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future, what would have happened, should, would, could, and but. You didn't make your effort. Just to say, you didn't make any effort. No one, because no other person, our current representative didn't reach out to Jay. Any other hopefuls didn't reach out to Jay. As far as I know, no one went to talk to Jay except Kyle Thompson. So nobody goes. Kyle decides, it's not worth it. It's going to be, political disaster for me to make that effort. And that bill passes, or that bill is introduced as it was written. How does a lobbyist help? A lobbyist is to get them to hopefully not vote for it. How does that help in the situation, especially considering we have a supermajority?
Boy, it's tough. It's really tough. I mean, essentially, what you can do is you can threaten the whole, "I'll take my ball and go home" if you don't vote the way or produce a bill that I like, which would mean, we'll make sure that you don't get reelected, Senator Williams. But here's the problem with that logic is that he didn't win Franklin County to begin with. And he may never win Franklin County, but he doesn't represent just Franklin County. And he won by a wide majority in the other areas that he was
He's got
voted
5
on.
counties altogether.
That's
I
correct.
would say if every vote in Franklin County went to not him, he still would have won.
It would have been very close, and he
It's
probably
still
would
been
have.
close. If he lost, if he
Every
only got
vote.
0 votes in Franklin County,
Yeah.
it'd been close. But with him
I
having
think he was-
5 counties and pieces of Boone and pieces of Carroll,
Right.
And unless you're in Philadelphia, where there is 100% voting one way or the other,
110.
110%, right? Then it's not
That's
going to
true.
happen. But
So you got the lobbyist.
so you have lobbyists on either side of a lot of bills, but now with supermajorities, lobbyists are it's tough. And even Senator Thayer, who I know is not everybody's favorite person, he made a very good point. I don't necessarily like a lot of money being spent on lobbyists right now because it's throwing bad good money at bad. And the problem is that when you throw that good money out, yes, you want the lobbyists to help you pass a bill or to stop a bill. Stopping a Republican-led bill at this point is fruitless. Okay, it really is. And the interesting thing is that the lobbyist for the plant board truly, I think she knew that, and I say that because she's a very politically savvy individual and
Lobbyist.
the lobbyist,
Yeah,
and she's
very.
very good at what she does,
Very.
but she's also highly connected to the Republican Party, and she knew. I mean, she knew the game, and so I think that the plant board, their efforts were to just get rid of this bill altogether.
Just make it go away.
But didn't she leave? Like, didn't you go to one of your meetings and she had just left Senator
Yes.
Williams? So
Yes.
y'all were like back to back.
That's correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
And again, and Senator Williams will tell you this. Never was it mentioned in there. This language right here that talks about this payment in lieu is something we're concerned about, which is again why we were so surprised the next day when it's like, yay, we saved 350 jobs guaranteed, and it's like, well, now they're going to throw a $3 million tax on us. That wasn't new language. That was not new language.
That was a total pivot.
It was a total pivot, and so was it about that the whole time? Because if it was, you would think they would have had that as a talking point. But my point now is that I would not have done anything that would have lumped a tax rate increase or a rate on your utility bill on the individuals of Frankfort.
Right.
Why would I do that?
And your commission record proves that.
I am going to study it and look. Am I ever going to do anything that's not popular? 100%. But a lot of times, the things that I do that aren't popular are because local politics or state politics, they want to do things the way that's always been done, and whether it's a parking garage or whether it's chickens, whether it's solar energy, whatever it is, instead of just blessing things. I know. I have heard this from people who have come in and presented to the city commission that they are told ahead of time, you're going to get grilled by the guy on the very end. He does it to everybody. Just be prepared. You know how it goes. And
Like Mark Cuban always says on Shark Tank, know your numbers.
well, and that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to come to me and say, solar's the greatest thing ever, have the cities that have gone totally solar. At least have them in your back pocket, something. And in this particular case, I felt like, $3 million tax. Show me. Okay, explain to me how it's going to be there. And I have had lots of text conversations with people who have said, but what about this? But what about this? But that's not in the bill, right? There is no tangible property tax that is
Your
in
tax exempt.
that's the city. And by the way, if you're municipally owned and you're controlled, I would argue that you're exempt. But again, right now the state's exempt, but they pay a payment in lieu of a whopping $195,000 for the real property ad valorem, which was negotiated in 1975 and then bumped up a couple times under Governor Carroll. But
And even adjusted for inflation, that's a really low number.
I mean
Yeah, the city
$1975.
schools are getting screwed big
Yeah.
time.
The city schools are really getting messed over because those buildings are in the old city. But in this particular case, I don't see the issue so much so that they would go, well, we're going to have, this is going to raise your rates, right? And I had somebody call me tonight, and he's very well versed on this, and he said, let's say it is $3 million on everything. What's 350 jobs worth? And I was like, that's a great argument if there was actually a $3 million tax, but there's not. Right. And I don't want it to get to but what if, should we be willing to pay this just to save those jobs? That's not what this was. This was not a this for that, okay? This was not a, okay, fine, if you don't like, if you're not going to sell this off for Senator Williams, then you're going to pay a tax. That was never the way that
here's the thing, when you're doing this kind of stuff, anytime you're negotiating anything, be it, a contract or whatever, what ifs are great, but let's base the what ifs on reality of what can actually happen. And, we've seen a bunch of comments out there that are what if type statements that are not even based in reality. Like, yeah, what if? Yeah, but that what if cannot happen. So yeah,
I think at the end of the day,
if no one else will, Kyle, I want to thank you for making sure you save jobs. Apparently, you're not going to get any thank you. Sometimes just not saying anything at all is just as good as a thank you. But
I appreciate that.
Because you attacked a problem that was voiced.
He became involved.
You became involved, and at zero cost. How much does a good lobbyist cost?
Well, I mean, $3,000 to $6,000 a month. But I will say this, I don't get a benefit from the plant board other than I get good service from the plant board. But I have a friend named Josh, who's a very good friend of mine, and Josh works at the plant board, and I think Josh is like a little brother to me. Mm-hmm. And Josh was not happy about this legislation, and Josh wasn't happy about this legislation afterwards. And he and I kind of had a little row about it. But every time I sat down with Senator Williams, I thought about Josh and his wife and his kids, and I thought about Brandon and his wife and his kids. And I think that people that truly know me know that that's not baloney, because even in the things that I do on a daily basis, I don't do them because I'm getting rich or because I'm benefiting in some way that makes my life significantly better. I have a very stressful life trying to help those folks out, and I don't want a pat on the back. But when I go in there, I want people to know that I'm not going in there going, this is going to make life better for Kyle Thompson. I'm doing it because I don't want my buddy Josh to lose his job. I don't want Brandon to lose his job. I don't want them to be worried about what happens if we become a single family household and my wife's a teacher and that's all that we have. And that I don't want that to ever be a worry, because I would hate that to happen to me. And if I have connections, if I have the ability to call up a senator or the mayor or whoever, I'm going to do it. I mean, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? If I care about somebody enough that I wouldn't want something like that to happen to me,
right? Why
wouldn't I use a connection that I have to help save their job? And that's the least I can do as a human. And again,
and the worst outcome is he says, no, I don't want to meet.
That is. And then I can stand up and kick and scream and have the protests all I want in the city commission, right, and, work to get him, unelected
but that's
the next
a
time.
negative way to get something done.
It's 100% the negative
way.
Well,
right. And you never attacked him. You never.
I did not. You
never said, he's an outsider, piece of whatever. And
no, and the thing that people need to realize is that, no, he does not live here, but he is our representative.
Yes. Well, President Biden doesn't live here either. He's still our president.
He is. That's right. And we have to work.
And I don't even know that he won Franklin County. He may have won Franklin County.
He did not the last two.
He only won Fayette and Jefferson.
Okay.
But what I will say is that, in reality, you have to know how the game is played.
Right.
And whether it's local, state, or federal politics, you have to know how the game is played. And you have to play within the confines of those rules. You don't get to make up the rules, right? I don't get to make up the rules of maybe I should have gone out and, gotten 70 people to vote against this bill because that wasn't going to happen, no matter how persuasive I am.
Right. You don't have that many connections.
I don't have that many connections. I have a lot of contacts in my phone, but not that many. But I knew I could get a meeting. And if I could get a meeting, at least one, then I could at least express to Senator Williams why the plant board is different, why Frankfort is different, and why we have to make sure that we protect these jobs and that we also work to lower the rates. He doesn't gain anything from that either because at the end of the day, he doesn't care if he loses almost all the votes in Franklin County because he can still win all the other votes.
Right.
So this was truly, I believe, Senator Williams working to benefit a constituent and a local leader that he felt knew what he was talking about. It was well versed on the language and what the language was going to do, and went line by line with him. And he appreciated that, I think, more than just people hurling, "You stink,"
Right. Well, in our previous state senator, based out of Anderson County, I think I probably sent her about 5 emails concerning 151 and, during the construction phase. Never received a response.
Well,
But with Senator Williams, I've sent him a few. Not only have I got a response, I've got a phone call back. So why not work with the guy that's our senator now in making the sausage instead of waiting until after it's cooked, and then you bite into it and say, "Oh, crap."
Oh, we put too much salt in this one.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Anderson County's still not in Frankfort, correct?
No, it's a new
Just
one.
making
Anderson,
sure.
Shelby, and somebody else.
yeah.
I'm not real good at
We
geography.
haven't, we,
That's
we
a
haven't,
really good
we haven't
race.
merged yet
Yeah.
with
But
Anderson County.
she was our senator, our
Right.
state senator.
And she didn't
wasn't as
respond.
responsive. That was my point.
And
Right.
she's
That's
been
what I was
redistricted.
responsive. Yeah, she wasn't responsive to my questions, where other legislators and local people that I've
Right.
communicated with, which I do pretty regular, they always respond.
And bet she's been to Frankfort.
She drives right down my road, I bet you.
And Senator Williams probably doesn't come to Frankfort very often other than
You'd be
session.
surprised. You'd
Yeah.
be surprised. He is really focusing on. There's a lot of things that he's focusing on in Frankfort.
Yeah,
that's
and,
good.
because
and
he
just
knows
as and just as a tease, people can say they don't like Senator Williams, but Senator Williams, beyond this bill, I mean, you can just look at
there's
all
other
the-
things in the pipeline.
There's other things in the pipeline that are community changing that he's working on, and the reason I know that is because when we were talking about the language in this particular bill, we began talking about economic development, and Senator Williams was very clear on his intent on helping Frankfort overcome some financial hurdles that we've had, and so I've never had a local official, and I should say local, a state elected official,
State elected, yeah.
that has been willing to go to bat on issues of
Well, we've never had
millions and millions of
until
dollars.
just recently. We've had Democrats, and now we've got Republicans. They can actually, because no matter what you say, and I've had discussions with people. No matter what you say, if you want to get something done, it's got to be on the Republican side because of it's beyond a super majority. It's a huge majority.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you're going to get
It's
bills
almost
passed.
I will say that it is almost impossible for a Democrat to get it flipped.
Yeah,
I mean, you'll swing a few Republicans over, but I don't think they
but
can do it.
there were this last week, 3 Democrat bills did get passed.
Yeah.
But now they had Republican leadership,
Co-sponsors.
co-sponsors signed on to it as well. So it was 3 good bills.
Right.
So they can work across the aisle. But I'll tell you, that's the first 3 Democrat-sponsored bills I've seen get passed in forever.
Well, and I think
So that's why it's important to have Republican representation
it is, but
in today's time.
it is, but it's also, and I'll use city government, because we're it's nonpartisan. Everyone knows what everybody's political leanings is, I would guess, but I think people would be surprised at the kind of conversations that we have and who lands on certain issues. Recently I've found myself saying to the city manager, I understand that I'm probably the most liberal discussion about this particular topic. You have to go across aisles to make things work.
Right.
And so many times that doesn't happen, and we have this division in our country again because we just throw out talking points. We're not transparent with individuals, and that is the problem. And in this day and age where you can get on Twitter and TikTok and everything else and have nothing but talking points, well, then all of a sudden you hate your family and your friends and everybody else because they have a particular view on things, and that isn't how politics was supposed to be run. And you go all the way back to when George Washington gave his last address, his greatest fear was that we were going to have a two-party system that would divide the country in half, and we did in 1860, and then we're back there again.
We're there again now. Yeah.
And it's kind of what we're seeing with this. I mean, it's not necessarily political or party oriented directly, but
no, it's not, and that's the crazy thing.
And it just so happens that you and Senator Williams are both conservatives.
Republicans.
Right.
Well,
conservative is important too, but both are, because there's a lot of Republicans out there that aren't conservative at all. But
Lindsey Graham.
it always reminds, when we talk about that kind of thing, I think about, it's the left hand and the right hand of the same body. And I remember Trey Gowdy talking about this. He said, you'd really be surprised if you hang out in Washington, D.C., who you would see at the same lunch table talking to one another. He says, we might be battling out there on the floor, but we go to lunch together.
Yeah.
We're friends.
It's like ball teams.
Yeah.
You fight like hell on the field, and then you go out, everybody goes out and gets the beers.
He said if we weren't, we'd never get anything done.
And Justice Ginsburg and Justice
Alito.
and Justice not Alito but Scalia.
Scalia, that's right. Yeah, they were best friends.
They were best friends,
Yeah.
and they couldn't be more different.
Yeah, they were
on
totally
political.
opposite sides of the spectrum.
And
But they were best
I
friends.
think people have lost that aspect. And look at our city commission.
The ability to disagree and still be friends.
Walk out and leave it in City Hall, and I think a lot of us are able to do that now. And that's how it is in the law, and that's how it is. In other aspects, we can fight like dogs, but at the end of the day, just leave it.
We should schedule intermissions when we do these marathons.
Just get up and walk away. If you
I will in a
if
second.
you have to take
Is this a pee break? That you
Yeah,
you got to
yeah.
take a
Feel like
break.
I'm at
Go
the-
ahead and do it because I'm ready to hit these.
You're,
things.
I know that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, well, go ahead and do it. I mean, that's the beauty
Nobody
of these
needed to know. Just get up and go.
Just kidding. Now the
Now
entire
everybody knows where you're
I
paying.
can say, Eric, go get me another Coke, please,
Yeah.
while you're out. No, I'm good. But so these are the the bill summaries listed on the Kentucky Legislature website.
You can go to LRC.
Search on KYLRC, KY space LRC, and you'll find the link, and then just go to the bill and hit click Senate, and then click Senate Bill 220, and you'll find this. This is on the very first page, and this is what's called a bill summary. So I pulled all the bill summary out and I numbered them so we could go over them one by one there, Commissioner. So the first one is just a simple definition of defining governing body and customer. So that gives a definition of what these terms mean in the bill, correct?
Seemed pretty important, yet they had never been defined in the statute
in 80 years.
in 80 years, right?
Yeah, okay. So then the next one reads, and I'm going to read them word for word, and you comment on them. Amend KRS 96.172 to increase the combined electric and water plant board membership from 5 to 7. Can you explain that?
Yes. So the reason was to add proportionality for people who live in the county.
Representation.
And what right now, to be on the Frankfort Plant Board, you have to live within the city of Frankfort.
Welcome back, Eric.
And so
Thank you. Now that the entire internet got a life.
yeah, and so what this does is that at least puts two individuals, and then as you read the bill, as proportional as the services get, that then changes how many are city appointees versus county appointees.
Mm-hmm. And I lost what I was going to say. The groups. How do these board members get appointed? What's the sausage making for this specific thing?
So it's very interesting because before this, it was the statute said the mayor or the executive of the city. Now, we are not a strong mayor form of government.
Correct.
I said that's another debate.
That's a whole
other
topic,
debate.
which we will have.
But the issue I think that is out there is it the city manager or is it the mayor that should be making these? We have an ordinance that allows the mayor to make these particular appointments, but what this bill does is it doesn't allow the mayor just to come up with an individual and throw him to the commission, and we all go.
You wouldn't want
mean,
to put, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This person sounds great, Mayor. What it does is it allows a vetting process through
Different
3 groups.
Yeah.
And then those groups have to present those options to the mayor. And then from the county's perspective, the judge executive actually is the one who nominates 3 individuals to the mayor. So then the mayor chooses that person. If you have 3 good nominees that the judge executive gives you, then the mayor will make a choice. But
And the mayor could reject those 3, right? Or not?
no, I mean it has to come from that group.
I mean, could he reject those 3 and say, "Hey, find me somebody better"?
I mean, could he? Yes. I mean, but the reality is that if
He won't.
But he won't, because you could be at a standstill like we had recently with KCDC. I mean, that's the reality. Is so that. And there is a separation of the powers of governments too. I mean, this allows the judge executive to have his particular choices, one of the 3 up there, and so that.
And they come from, if we mentioned them earlier, so if we can remember them again.
So you might have it in front of you, but I think the chamber,
The Chamber of Commerce, the local Chamber of Commerce,
local chamber, a development corporation,
a development group,
right, and then the local ad.
local ad.
Yeah, and so that's
So that's 3 pretty qualified organizations that could pull from their membership to make recommendations.
Yeah,
or outside of their membership.
Yeah, and of course, you have a situation where you don't necessarily have all of a mayor or a commission's first choice. I mean, because it takes the back scratching away out of there. Because these are gonna come from other individuals, and of two of the groups right now that we mentioned of that group, I think would put people forward as options that wouldn't necessarily be who the city commission or mayor would think of as their first option, because they're a little bit more aggressive on certain issues like economic development.
Right. Okay. So the second one, again, reading word for word, require that vacancies on the board be filled in a manner that will bring the board membership closest to proportionality, representative of customers of the board who live inside and outside the city limits of the city served by the combined system or plant. That's basically what we just talked about.
And that's exactly what we just talked about, where there is no representation right now. By the way, if you live in Spring Hill and you have plant board, cable, electric, and water, nobody represents you.
Or any of those 3.
Or any of those 3. Yeah. Even if you don't have a bundle, nobody represents you on that board.
Like I got cable and internet.
And you live at 151, right?
Yeah, but our electric is Bluegrass Energy, which we can go to their board meetings right down the road in Anderson County.
Right.
Or you can call it the PSC if nothing happens.
Good point. Yeah. Okay. 3, provide for the nomination of board members and appointment by the mayor. Apply anti-nepotism restrictions, which I want you to define that, relating to board membership and operations of the county judge executive.
So anti-nepotism laws that have been in effect for a number of years and are governed by the Legislative Ethics Commission specifically lay out who would fall under that. Father, son, father, daughter.
It's 3 degrees of separation.
It's essentially 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon. And you have to
Exactly what I was thinking.
I mean, it really is. It's like he was in Footloose, and then but really what it does is it doesn't allow for individuals who are related to be able to be appointed to this board, which would also mean that the groups that present these individuals can't present somebody
who they're related to.
That
they're
related.
3 cousins.
Right.
So the members can't be related?
No, it goes down to the mayor and the city commission, and you can't have a connection there. There's no the other groups don't fall under the legislative ethics. So I mean they're independent agencies, so they wouldn't be able to be. But the mayor and the city commission are
okay. And the 4th one is pretty straightforward. Amend KRS 96.175 to remove the combined plant board's authority to perform any act not repugnant to law. Explain, please.
So under the current language, there is language in there that says that the combined plant board's authority to perform any act not repugnant to law is unnecessary because bringing them under this statute requires them to fall under all statutory requirements and authority. Because they're independent right now, that is superfluous. That's superfluous language that is in there. So instead of thinking that it's saying, oh, can they now do something that's repugnant? No, that language is in there because they were independent, preventing them from doing something that was repugnant, but there's already language that prevents utilities to do that.
So independent means like what was in the State Journal by board member
Jason DeLong.
DeLong, is that how you
DeLong.
pronounce it? I'll read what the article said. It said the plant board might be one of the first municipal utilities in the nation to apply for a particular grant. I think this is along solar panels. DeLong said. He said he checked multiple times to ensure the board's eligibility. Quote, I found out municipal utilities were eligible for this about 2 months ago, and you could have pushed me over with a piece of straw, he said during Wednesday's meeting. We are, as an entity with an appointed board, eligible for this. Then the State Journal article writer said the USDA website on the grant states that government utilities that operate, quote, independent of direct government control, close quote, can apply for the grant. When I read that, that tells me that the city commission and the mayor and city manager have no control over the plant board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So that's why number 4 in the summary exists.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. There has to be, you have to have oversight. If you're going to fall under these regulations and you're going to, and again, I'm a conservative. I don't like government oversight. But when there are things that affect the daily dollars and services that are necessities, you have to have a level of uniformity and regulation there. And if it's not there, then you can have a bad board or you can have bad leadership over there, and they raise the rates so that they can, have the biggest solar panels ever, and not that that's the
Biggest
issue at
solar
hand.
farm, yeah.
Biggest solar farm ever. But you have to have some type of oversight, and so when it comes to this, they did not fall under the Public Service Commission, and that's not where. But it up until 1999, the Frankfort Commission would be brought every single issue when it comes to a financial or capital project, and after 99, they were independent of any oversight of the city.
Okay. And this is where you and Eric were talking about payment in lieu of taxes. Number 5 is amend KRS 96.179 to require, instead of allow, the combined plant board to pay in lieu of ad valorem property taxes an equivalent amount to each taxing district within which its properties lie. And there are 7 I know in the county there's 7 taxing districts, the schools and 6 very smaller ones that just get minor amounts of money, including county government.
Right.
County government doesn't get much money
City
off property
government doesn't
taxes.
much either.
Are there 7 taxing districts in the city also?
No. But
Okay, so I'm not aware.
No, I think they're 5.
Okay.
But either way, the lion's share of all that goes to
schools.
local schools, whether it's county schools or city schools.
So this would be additional money going to Frankfort High and 2nd Street School.
It would.
And all the county schools also.
And let me point out what this specifically says. It says in there, instead of allowing, it requires them to make a payment in lieu. What the original language says, that anybody that chose to go under the particular language of Chapter 96 was allowed to make a payment if they wanted to. And I don't know if you all know any businesses that just make payments to schools because they want to.
Do that, Eric?
Not very often.
But the plant board has not made any payment to the schools that is reflective of a payment in lieu of a tax. This is
where they've say
come up
they
with a $3
broadcast
million.
the games and all that kind
That's
of
correct.
stuff.
That's correct. Right. And
Because that has a
the free
cost
internet.
because those guys are getting paid overtime.
100%,
I'd
and do a
assume
great
they're
job.
getting paid overtime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know because I think I asked David once, or or Kathy Lindsay maybe, because they're putting in a lot of hours. Sometimes 10 o'clock on a Friday night.
Oh, and then of course,
That's a lot.
and then you're having to run that truck back to
Right.
back
So
to the
another
playbook,
hour and a half
at least, and
offloading.
and having done that for 30 years, I can tell you what those guys do is, and ladies, I say guys, I mean
pretty
guys
awesome.
and ladies,
It's
but
pretty awesome.
it's fantastic for our small
Okay,
community.
number 6, amend KRS 96.182 to only allow for the combined plant board's excess revenues to be used to purchase outstanding bonds or to reduce rates.
Yes, and that's what we were talking about earlier is any net revenues that's after your operations, after your capital investments, all those other things that you've done, your net revenues can go towards paying down your debt, which is your bonds that you have.
What's that called? Is that the sinking fund that's
They
in
have
the
a sinking-
language?
Yeah, they have a sinking fund, and
Which I didn't know what that was.
and that helps pay your ongoing.
I'm trying to get this
fees ahead.
document on the screen.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering why you weren't talking.
Yeah, Eric went
weird.
quiet.
Turned
That's,
himself on.
that's unusual.
It was right after he went to the bathroom too. Whatever.
Are you eating dinner over there?
Yeah.
I am.
But but the only two things it allowed for the original language and essentially the language that all of their municipality and essentially the language that all of their municipality and are the essentially the language that all of their are paid out by the and essentially the language paid out all of and then it goes paid out by the and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by and essentially the language paid out all and then it goes paid out by How would that be determined? So there's two things that they would do. They have to, and you'll read this later in the bill, but they have to bring their budget. So we have to be able to see their budget. Sounds fair. And then there has to be an audit of that budget every 2 years.
Which they get right now, right?
Which they already do their own. They already have their own budget, and they do an internal audit with their own CPA. They have to have a third party do this one every 2 years, and then what this actually would do was it would require them to bring any public project. So, for example, we want to bring. A project that we'll use solar farms, for example. It seems to be the low hanging fruit here. We want to build a 60-acre solar farm that will be subscription only. Okay, that is a public project for the benefit of the public.
If I wanted to get that energy credit, I pay a fee or something.
You pay a subscription fee, and then you're
monthly or once.
Well, it depends. They have different subscription options.
Okay.
They have monthly, they have one time only, and then they have a lifetime fee that you can pay as well. But either way, if that project were to go forward, and that's defined not in this section, but in the section that applies to all utilities of what a public project is. And so that's what that would mean.
Okay. All right, number 8, prohibit a combined plant board's use of revenues from its electric or water utility service to be used to subsidize unrelated activities undertaken by the board.
So we want our electric and water rates to be as low as possible, right? So what we don't want to do is we don't want the electric rates that you pay as a ratepayer to be figured so that there's a net gain used to pay for the telecom side, if you will. If they want to go to a 5G network that they're going to put in, you don't want your electricity rates to pay for that. You want your internet and telecom rates to pay for that. And that's how all other utilities in the state of Kentucky are managed.
But how many utilities are there all together?
Well, there's 29 municipal utilities in the state of Kentucky, but
for
then
water and electric.
But then you have other agencies, co-ops, you have the TVA,
Water
you have
boards.
water boards, and all these other things. And those are all agencies as well. But they all
Who
go
are they control? Who are they under the control of?
The Public Service Commission.
That's what Eric was talking about earlier.
So basically, what that does is they can't say, okay, we can raise up everybody's electric, cable, and water $2 a month approximately on average so that we can pay for this
Launch a satellite
or expanded solar panel farm or whatever.
Yeah, and the way that the language in here is it talks about that you have to have different accounts for each fund, okay? So that doesn't mean that you can't have like the HR department that is paid for by a percentage basis of all of those, but that means that you have to break it down by if 40% of what you do is telecom, or where your revenues are, 40% of what the HR is, that's how much you can pay. But what you can't do is you can't cross those streams. You can't have, like in Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams,
Well,
and so
when we had Plant Board in here, that was one of the things that we talked about was because in the beginning they talked about if we sell a telecom, all these other things fail.
Yeah, that was not a good starting point.
It was not a good starting point. And they assured us that
this one's a little colder.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm sorry. This one I'd worked on a little bit more.
they assured us that telecom doesn't support electric and and all that, and that's fine if that's what the practice is and all. But we have no way to audit that. We have no way of really knowing that that's the case. So this bill would codify it into law that they have no choice but to operate that way.
They have no choice to operate that way, and then the city has the opportunity to at least be a
review,
a check and balance, if you will, which every agency should have. But at the same time, let me be clear: we're not experts on the city commission, right? And we can't.
They would hire a study to be
Well,
there.
and we can't. Yeah, that's right. A study of studies committee. We joke about that, but we don't have the bandwidth in our finance department, to be honest with you. And I don't think that they want to have that responsibility.
When bandwidth, you're meaning expertise.
I'm not just expertise, but the people. When you have 7 people in your whole finance office, right, and the county may have 1 or 2,
and reviewing their budget would be crazy.
I mean, it would be very difficult.
Yeah,
that's why you get
large.
That's why they've asked for a third party to audit it every 2 years. Now,
in this bill,
and before we get to that, that doesn't mean that you have to pay Charles T. Mitchell or whoever else to audit this, because we actually give them the public option of using the auditor of public accounts. Now, that's much cheaper and a much quicker review of this. The same entity that audits the sheriff's office, as you remember.
They were there. They did us 3 times.
Yeah.
Well, and for me, in banking, we had tons of audits, and for me, having them do that, there's no appearance of potential conflict
with the state doing it.
With the state doing
Correct.
it, they're not tied to Frankfort directly in any.
And well, let me tell you from personal experience, they are super detailed.
Mm-hmm.
They take their job very seriously.
Yeah, they blasted us the first year, but then we got 0 after the next 2 years.
And then you learn,
right?
And you follow the rules.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's going to happen here. I mean, again, the finance director at the plant board is a freaking pro at what he does.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows what he's doing, and as he said to
When
me,
you don't get those kind of positions and not because
and he actually at one time was serving as the interim CEO as well as the CFO. So he's a very intelligent and capable
So no
individual.
worries. No worries.
I know. I don't have
there.
any worry
I
about
got
that.
Yeah, it's not like budgets that the three of us deal with in our businesses. You know, all three of our budgets put together.
I don't deal with my budget. I give that to Jen. You know that.
Goodness.
You know that. You know that. So
And Scott handles ours.
Scott handles yours.
I spend it and he pays for it.
Right. Exactly. That's kind of how my job is.
But,
Okay.
but in comparison,
Yes,
the
yes.
budget,
This
they're
is-
not even in the same realm.
No, and their budget is, our budget may be 70 pages and their budget may be, 35 pages, but you're digging deep into those 30 pages of what each of those dollars
You
is.
do to the supporting documents.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
All right.
number 9, amend KRS 96.184 to make the combined plant board's issuance of revenue bonds subject to approval of the governing body. So before you answer, does that mean right now they can issue bonds on the city without your all's approval, or how does that work?
They can issue bonds that they guarantee without city commission approval, yes. Right
So
now.
what does that mean? Is that a
This
good thing,
means-
a bad thing?
this
or
means
just
that
needs
they-
to be,
this means
needs
they
to be have oversight again.
So this means that they have to come to us and say, we want to issue a bond, and we as the city commission go, what's the economic impact of this on the city? Very transparent,
Same thing like
situation.
state government does.
Very much so. And if they issue a bond, which is they issue plenty of bonds, we issue plenty of bonds, but if they're going to say we want $100 million bond because we want to launch a satellite, and we're like, well, wait a second. And you go, well, these guys wouldn't do that. I'm not worried about these guys, right? I'm worried about 40 years from now, right? I'm worried about if you have bad leadership or if you have bad board members and you have bad ideas. There needs to be a check and balance. And so that I think is where it's lost on here because people go, but you just said you don't have any worries about, the CFO. Well, I don't, but I may worry about the CFO in 40 years, although he may still be there in 40 years. He'd be 100, I think, but I'm just kidding. He'd be 80. But at the same time, it'd be, that's the thing we have to think about long term.
Right.
Is the check and balance.
Okay. 10, amend KRS 96.185 to require that in conjunction with their required audits in each even-numbered fiscal year, the combined plant board shall have independent appraisals prepared for the properties and associated services for all projects and operations undertaken by the combined electric and water plant board that are unrelated to the provision of water or electric utility service. So I know that you were involved in the audit years. Originally, the bill was every year an audit.
That's correct.
And can you go forward on what you did there?
So
This is a direct thing that you got changed.
it was, and
Saves a lot of money.
One of the complaints was this is gonna cost a lot of money. Is the city gonna throw in money to help do this? And I said, you know what, you're right. And so I went to Senator Williams and I said, let's do it every 3 years. And he said, I'll meet you in the middle. Let's do it every 2 years. That's how the sausage is made, in law and in
Sometimes you get
statutory
more
writing.
meat. Sometimes you get more
Sometimes
fat.
you don't, and it's not. I walked away with not getting everything I wanted. He walked away with not getting everything he wanted. But what this does is, and I want to be clear about this: electric and water are the things that they have to provide to the citizens. Okay, they have to provide those to you. Everything else, your internet, your telephone, your security service, anything else outside of that, those are services above and beyond.
Cable TV.
Cable TV, very good
Biggest
example. We were the second in the nation
Right.
that had cable television.
1966.
I mean, they ran a cable. I mean, literally, they ran a cable from the top of the mountain where there was the dish that was catching it, and ran it down to the city of Frankfurt, and that was the second.
Yeah, in the whole country.
In the
We
whole
were
country.
The second city to have cable TV, and that's when we moved to Frankfurt. Was 1966. So we didn't have TV where I was from, down in the mountains.
So when I went in to talk to Senator Williams, I told him that story. I said, "Are you aware that we're the second city in the entire country that had cable television?" And he said, "How's that even possible?" And I told him the story.
Community and
yeah,
consolidated.
that's right, community
consolidated.
And he,
We had two.
yeah, and it was amazing then at that point for him to see the buy-in and the value that we had in our local community, But what this does is it says, okay, what is the value of all those things? Because if you're going to issue bonds and you're going to take debt out, right? Anytime you go to the bank, they want to know, what do you have to collateralize that? Okay. Well, at the same time, we need to know, do you have things that are of zero value that we need to replace, that need to be, and you want to send a satellite up, but we have, all of the poles that are, of no value because they need to all be replaced. Is there a different, area? But again, we're not the experts. We're gonna defer to them 99% of the time. But this just gives a check and a balance there if there's something that's out of whack.
Right. But it gives you an opportunity to take fixed assets and get them off the books. Like
it does.
It's $0.
It does.
We did that at Farmers, and just in IT equipment alone, we had
Farmers Bank.
Farmers Bank. We had the first year we did, had 30 pages of assets that were totally depreciated, had zero value. We didn't have to pay any state tax on them or anything. And I mean, then every year after that, it became very easy to do because there was 30 pages less that you had to go through to figure out.
Right. And there's more than one ways to peel an onion, right? So if the plant board says this is going to cost us a lot of money, and the city says this is going to cost us a lot of money, maybe the two entities figure out, okay, we hire an on-site auditor that can handle valuations throughout the year, so that the CFO of the plant board doesn't spend all of his time dealing with those issues.
Right.
So again, there, you talk about costs that go into these things. There can be shared costs between the city, county, schools, all these different things, and we're not talking about merger. All right, don't hear that word. But we're talking about shared costs, and I think that's very important to know.
Okay. Right, because you don't want your CFO doing stuff that somebody
right.
less experienced can do,
or somebody that is more experienced in just valuation.
Right. Right.
And
spending bad money to do that.
Okay. 11, amend KRS 96.187 to make the 60-day time period after which challenges to ordinances or resolutions relating to the combined plant board are barred begin after the ordinance or resolution is published in accordance with KRS Chapter 424. So when it's published, what does that mean?
So when the ordinance is published is at the time that it's originally, it is not when it was originally presented. It's when it's voted on and it's actually published as a passed ordinance.
Off.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that makes it official law.
That's correct. And so what that does is it changes that time frame. Whereas the challenge now has to be when it's presented, and we have to wait all that time period. We have to have those 2 meetings and all those. This allows that 60-day challenge, which again, we're getting into some weeds here, but
that's what the bill's about.
That's right. But it protects the interests of the ratepayers, so that there is total transparency that when an ordinance.
Say that again. It protects
the ratepayers, because if there's a bad ordinance that goes out, right? Not everybody knows about it until it hits the state journal, right? They don't know that it was presented. They don't know there was a second vote until all of a sudden it's like front page, Thompson votes for bad bill, and that's when at that point, once it is passed and the mayor has signed it or the judge executive, then you have issues that you can address directly within that time period.
Okay.
It essentially pushes that time to the point where people will know and be able to.
And the 12th is just a standard thing, I'm sure. Create a new section of KRS 196.171 to 96.188 to define terms.
That's correct.
So they went through
definitions.
Definitions of particular words that were not defined before, correct?
Yes, and part of those, if I remember correctly, was that it was ratepayer, was commission, which is the Public Service Commission, not the City Commission.
Right. Yeah. There's several.
And so there were a lot in there, and you think those seem kind of important. They probably should have been. Look, guys who serve in the legislature are not perfect either, and neither are bill writers. You find these things as you're amending and fixing bills later on that you're like, you know what, we probably need to define these things to make it more understandable. So that's all that section does.
Yeah.
Well, and as language evolves over time, it's still defined within there what you really mean.
His
For
and her.
example, I got made
Is Bill Clinton.
Yeah, Senator Williams. I was just looking through the bill just for the heck of it.
It says
and
therefore.
There's therefore, and it's THEREFOR. So me being persnickety or
An old fart.
anal about these kind of things, yeah.
The guy
I
that
said-
still uses double spaces after a period.
No, they didn't there. But I said, Senator, somebody misspelled therefore. He goes, man, quit looking at that stuff. Just pay attention to the bold.
Because he said the way that it was spelled was the way that it was spelled in 1890.
Yeah,
whenever
way back
they
in the
started
day,
using
yeah,
their.
that's how-
1642 when they
spell it.
wrote it.
Well,
Yeah.
we still can't fight duels.
Yeah, so so I learned that part not to pay attention to the non-bold part.
13's a big one. 13's a
Yeah,
big one
13's a big one.
because it was actually mentioned in the articles
Yeah.
that people have read.
So here's 13. Prohibit the combined plant board from using any funds derived from the provision of any of its services for political, institutional advertising. Can you go into that?
Yeah. So one of the questions or one of the statements that's been made is that is a chilling effect on free speech.
Yeah.
Well,
Eric's got that. It's this one.
Yeah, I know.
So continue on,
so
please.
what that actually goes on to say is that you can't use this for institutional or political means, which means that if you don't like a city commissioner, you can't use your airwaves to annihilate a city commissioner over the airwaves, right?
Even to the point of halftime of a football game, you can't say, man, I saw Commissioner X run over a dog and he just kept on going.
You can't. Yeah, you absolutely can't do that. And so that's not allowed. Now, here's the kicker: is that in that statement that was made by Ms. Lindsay, is that it says, well, we can't help the Rotary Kids Club or something of that nature. There's absolutely nothing in that language that says anything about that. And in fact, political and institutional advertising is not allowed by any utility.
28 other utilities.
Well, not just the 28, but all of the other ones.
The water boards.
The water boards and the the
co-ops.
KUs and the co-ops and
Yeah.
the TVAs. There are restrictions already on every other organization on those two entities. And the reason I know that is because, again, when I sat down with Senator Williams, I leaned across and I pointed at it and I said, this language can't stand because it included not just political and institutional, but it also included their own rate information that they weren't allowed to provide that either. I said, that's not going to pass muster because if you're allowing AT&T to come in with internet services in any community, and AT&T can advertise, why can the plant board not advertise? And he goes, you're absolutely right. That's the one that has to come out because that shouldn't be in there. And he took it directly out of there.
Which is addressed in 14.
Which is addressed in 14.
Because 13 said prohibit.
Right.
14 says allow. So it says allow the combined electric and water plant board to use funds not related to the provision of water and electric service on promotional advertising for public projects. So this key word here is allow.
It will allow, and what that means is all of the money,
defining.
all of the money that you get from internet, cable television, security, all of those things, those monies can be used for all the promotional advertising you want, all of the Rotary Club, organization promotions that you want. What it can't do is you can't use the ratepayers' money that you have to provide us with electric and water, right? If I'm in your area and I have to use your electric and I have to use your water, you can't turn around and use my money to promote yourself, okay? But for, say, internet, okay? Because you have to give me electric and water.
Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. I can't use my electric funds to say, hey,
Buy my internet.
Buy my internet.
All right, right. It's exactly right. But you can use your internet funds all day long to promote your public projects and your other, access. And watch Cable 10 this weekend where the Franklin County
Can they use
Flyers.
that money to promote electric?
They can already use it to promote the electric,
No,
except for not
under
under
this.
not under this because you there's only one option.
Yeah, why
right?
would you promote it?
So
Well,
so
I'm
there's
just
no-
talking about theoretically.
theoretically, but right now you could, but with this language you can't because there's no reason to. It's
Gotcha.
again good money thrown out for bad because if they're the only option in that particular area, and here we in Franklin County and in Kentucky we have service areas, right? And the Public Service Commission controls those service areas, and so thou shalt not cross over into this particular area. And I think in Shelbyville there's there were discussions about where power was coming from, whether it was the co-op or whether it was KU, and I think they actually took one of the battery plants, one of those $1 billion projects we didn't get, and they literally split it down the middle of the battery plant, like who gets what, where the
wow.
power's coming from, and so long story short, there's no reason to promote the electricity if that particular area is already served by the electricity. But if you want to promote all your other public funding and things of that nature,
Like the football games,
like the football
basketball
games, everything else, you can use all of the money you make off cable advertising already. And so you just have to have a separate account. You got to keep that water and electric separate because that's the necessities that you have to provide to us. And those rates need to stay low. Those rates have to stay low. And so that protects us.
Okay, so the last one is one of the biggest ones. This is, again, the bill summary created by the bill writers for the Kentucky legislature concerning Senate Bill 220. So number 15 is create a new section, this is big, create a new section of KRS 278 to require the Public Service Commission to assist in the resolution of consumer complaints by customers of combined electric water system boards and to review their rates at least once a year. So this, when it says by customers, is that why they define customers at the very beginning?
As a ratepayer, correct.
Yeah, so that's why the definition of customer was put in.
It includes residential and commercial.
Yeah.
Whereas before it didn't.
So let me read it again. Create a new section of KRS 278 to require the Public Service Commission to assist in the resolution of consumer complaints by customers of combined electric and water system boards and to review their rates at least once per year.
So here's the interesting thing is that this does not put the Frankfort Plan Board under the Public Service Commission.
Does not.
It does not. And it also does not give judicial authority to the Public Service Commission. They're essentially a mediator of any issues that you may have. They can't even assess a penalty that if the plant board, says, sorry, this is what happened and this is what we're going to do and this is what we're not going to do. All they can do is try to assist in the mediation of these complaints.
So they cannot set the rates.
Oh, 100% not. No.
Because like when I was on Farmdale Water Board, we hadn't, this was when they started those SPGE, Special Protective Government Entities. We hadn't raised our water rates in 60 years in the whole existence of the Farmdale Water District. We went under PSC control, and they forced us to do the first rate increase ever for the Farmdale Water District.
And I think,
but this
I think
will not apply here.
I think you actually went up and fought that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Tremendously.
This would not.
Yeah,
this
we
would,
had a hearing before the Public Service
Yeah, this
Commission.
is not what this would do. This would be where someone says, I cut off my service on January 1st, and I was billed and then sent to collections for 3 months worth of service. And I didn't have service, and I want to file a complaint. Very much like you can file with the Attorney General's Office a consumer protection complaint. There is no judicial authority under there. All those great people out there do is they try to work out something to where everybody can be happy with this. Now, this also doesn't prevent an individual from filing a civil action against the plant board if they have a civil right to do so, like if they feel like they've been charged money or
And
things of that
that's
nature.
now. That's
and
now too,
you already
though,
have
isn't
that right now. This just gives one more level of chance to have somebody else look at this. But even if the plant board says go pound sand, there's no way that that's going to change the way that it is right now because the plant board can say that during these processes.
What was your example, Eric, of when a customer's got a complaint? Who do they complain to?
Oh yeah.
they go to the plant board.
Well, what I said is that if I don't like the way you dress, is
I file a complaint with you.
with me.
With you, if you don't care about me not liking how you dressed, you tell me to. No, everything's fine here. There's nothing wrong.
With some colorful adjectives.
Right.
But there's nothing. There's nowhere else. I can't go to your wife because she's not the boss. She's not the boss of you.
Damn
She's not.
straight.
You can go to my wife. She is the boss
Well,
of me.
that's why I didn't change this
Appreciate that,
example to you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put you publicly
easy,
on the spot
yeah.
because she is now watching.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the Fox Garden hen house. It's like, no, there's no problem here. Oh, okay. There's nowhere to go.
At least here you
And
can.
if you're a county resident,
And if you're a county resident, you have zero representation.
the board's
because-
like, who?
yeah, but now this would allow for them to at least go to the PSC and have them look at the issue, and then if they say, yeah, we think that they've done wrong, still does enforcement do anything, you're still going to have to go hire an attorney and go through it if the plant board
'cause,
doesn't.
Yeah, public service commission, they're very fair.
They
and
are.
just go prepared like you would to
Right.
anything.
But at the end of the day, with regard to this is absolutely no impact on the fiscal. We don't have to pay the Public Service Commission to do this. We don't have to do anything of that nature. So let's talk about to kind of wrap everything up in a nice bow. When you talk about the economic impact of this bill, all right, the first thing you have to think about is at a minimum, we guaranteed that 70 plus jobs stayed in Frankfort and Franklin County and stayed at the plant board.
You working with Senator Williams.
I will say that at the end of the day, if this is passed, the legislature will protect them with their language. Okay. If I was
let's say 70. There will be no jobs lost as a result of this
that's
legislation.
correct. That's correct. It is a zero sum gain or loss. But
And the only way jobs could be lost is if the city commission
the city commission
voted
decided
to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the city commission does it. I hope they enjoyed their time on the city commission. They will never be elected again. But so we did that. The second thing that we did was the economic impact on the citizens was if there is a surplus, right? They first have to, and again, if they're good business people, you got to pay your debts, right? So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to pay all the things they have to pay, which is now as a part of an operating expense, there is a payment in lieu of a tax, not a tax. There's a payment in lieu of a tax that is based upon your ad valorem, but there is no personal property tax inside the city. And in the county, the things that you're being taxed on are things that you're actually going to value as the plant board. All right. So that's very to get to a point where you're paying much of anything on personal tangible property would be very difficult, especially because of depreciation. There is an impact with regard to that ad valorem tax when it comes to real property, but you're talking about $800,000 to $1 million when you have $8.5 million as a surplus, next year alone. Okay, you'll be able to pay all of your debts now.
And that $8 million is based. Where'd you get that information?
Exactly from the plant board itself, and of course they have reserves for other things of that nature as well. But
So that'd be a rainy
But
day
that's
fund.
$8.5 million after they've serviced the reserve money, the other things.
that's correct.
That's not.
So the
you're
rainy
taking
is-
you're taking away my reserve capital. That if something happens,
No. I mean that there are all sorts of definitions that
Rainy day
that
fund.
plant boards or that
Right.
municipal utilities are allowed to have and put aside for rainy day funds and things of that nature. Then that money then has to go to lower your rates. Okay, so is there an amount of money that has to be paid? Yes, there is an amount of money that has to be paid, but there is not an amount of money that can be passed on to the rate payers. I specifically worked with Senator Williams to lower the rates. That's the whole point, and to make sure that the money that is provided to every school system throughout the state of Kentucky and every other municipality and in every other location that they get from a utility company that is now paid to the city and county school systems.
so the majority of the money that they would have to pay that they
Lion's
don't
share.
of it goes to our education, goes to our kids.
Just
Lion's
like
share.
our property taxes now.
Yeah, it goes to support the children in our community.
Lion's share.
Okay,
100%.
just want to make sure I understood.
And
that.
it's not a burden that's going to be passed along because you're lowering the rates after everything's already paid. So again,
So it's a double benefit.
it's a double
We're
benefit.
benefiting our city and county schools, and we're benefiting each individual ratepayer throughout the entire county.
Which is really important when you think about the barrel tax
Oh,
and the loss there. I mean, it's not even making that up.
I mean, it's not even touching.
It's a pittance of,
And it was
of what
not,
we're losing.
and it never came up in this conversation.
It did not,
didn't, but
that's
I'm making
another
that connection.
that's another 3-hour talk we
Right.
could have. But in reality, is it affecting the plant board? I will agree that there will be an effect on the plant board and their budget. What I will not agree with that it is a tax and that it can be passed on to the ratepayer, or that the ratepayer will ever be affected by this, because any net revenue that you have is going to be turned around and given to you. You can't pass anything on. This is a cost of doing business, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to give money that's actually going to lower ratepayers' bills. And so this idea and this, I mean, I thought it was kind of clever. We're going to call it the Kyle Thompson and Senator Williams, line item tax that goes on there. I mean, you'd have to literally have terrible business sense, not be able to have any of the revenues that you've had for 25 straight years, and then turn around and not be able to pay your bills, and then not be able to lower the rates of the ratepayers. If that happens, well, then you have another problem there. You have people in those positions that aren't able to do their job,
aren't qualified to
do their job, and so and that's not what we're going to have here. And especially with the folks that are already there, they're going to.
Well, and especially if we're going to get like every other year a review and
Exactly.
a look at the rates, so they can't say, "Well, I really want to put X dollars into the bank, so I'm going to have to ease my rates up just a little bit." To make up for the cut that I made last year.
So the interesting thing you have to take into consideration is that when it comes to the plant board electricity costs, is that when it comes to municipal utilities and all utilities across the state, the city of Frankfort has the 4th lowest kilowatt price per hour in the state. Okay, but for a household, their monthly bills on average are 127th in all cities in the state of Kentucky.
Oh wow!
So you have to go looking where's the loss? Well, there is loss of power that you have to look at. We have a
line leakage.
We have a higher than average line leakage, and we also have a higher than average usage amount in the city of Frankfort. So is that a situation where we need the plant board to assist us in figuring out how to make new builds, new homes more energy efficient, and things of that nature? So it helps the whole community by doing that. And I don't think that the rate is going to go up because of that. I think it'll actually help it go down based upon that. And it's not going to be because of any other initiative. It's going to be because the surpluses they're already making is going to turn around and go back to the ratepayers while we're also saving those jobs.
Are we good? Any
I did have a point to make. Sure. You talk about the self-valuation of your properties, or they would they would perform the valuation of X properties, and you think, well, if we evaluate if our valuation is lower, or if we lower them artificially because I just want it to be lower,
better not do that.
I guess that's kind of a double-edged sword, because that would be also what they could use to support bonds.
It is, but at the
audit is
right.
where it'll burn you.
Well, the audit will.
The audit, but at the same time, look, they're the experts. I mean, they're the ones who know how to depreciate values and things of that nature. And remember, your tangible property taxes, again, only in the county, those tangible property taxes that you have are only the things that are sitting in the county, and also that have a value. And so, a lot of these things that we're talking about have already been depreciated over years and years and years of service.
A telephone pole in Bald Knob is worth
$0,
but it's still standing.
Right.
But if they replace that pole because of a storm, then it's got value.
It does. And again, you're going to have more things that have significantly less value than you'll have things that do have value.
A tremendous amount.
And the rate is so low that you're talking about amounts that simply won't amount to much of anything, which is why I buffered that
I'm gonna take this
800,000
phone
too.
call.
That's fine. I probably should. Eric and I can wrap it up for you.
We can wrap this up.
Old man.
Yeah. We'll just block out his camera.
Yeah, it's probably best. So I will say this. I know there's been a lot that has been said. I know there is a lot of concern. I know there have been a lot of questions that have been asked. I will just simply say, if you are still concerned, if you have a fear that the language that's in there is somehow a negative effect on you as a ratepayer, or the cost of your electricity and your water, then come talk to me and show me what that language is that concerns you. But I promise you that I have, and I promise every person that's watching this and every person that will watch this, I have done everything I can to influence Senator Williams with how important these jobs are to Frankfort, how important it is to keep these rates low for Frankfort, and how important it is to have the plant board intact moving forward. And if that means that there has to be oversight, and they fall into line like every other utility in the state of Kentucky, then I don't. And if there is no negative impact to the ratepayers themselves, then I don't see a problem with the bill as presented right now. But I'm happy to listen to any other argument or any other issue that may come up. But I cannot say right now, with everything that's been presented to me, there would ever be a tax, a $3 million tax that would be raised on the people. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I believe their rates will actually lower. So in saying that, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is ktompson@frankfort.ky.gov. That's my city email, or you can email me directly at thompsonattorney@gmail.com, which is my personal email. And come to the meeting tomorrow night. There's going to be a city meeting. If you want to have a public comment at 5:00 and make that public comment, that is fine too. I'm sure there will be people there that didn't watch this or haven't read the bill that want to say things, and that's fine. That's their free right to do that. But let's all work together in a positive manner, leaving it in City Hall and at the Capitol, because we all want Frankfort to do better, and I think. I truly believe the language of this bill will do that. So, Eric, I appreciate you and Craig, allowing me to come and talk.
No, it's always a pleasure because you always come prepared. You always know what the facts and the data. And I think it's disingenuous to present information as fact. Here comes Craig stumbling back in after having a loud conversation right outside the door of the studio.
It's all right.
But I think it's disingenuous to present information without facts. Without having numbers to support.
It's at least not fair to the individuals in Frankfort. And
it's
Franklin
not
County.
fair, right? It's not fair to it's not fair to the ratepayers because you're not giving them an honest picture. And I don't want to be the bad guy, but I'm going to call it the way it is. If you're going to tell me that I'm being impacted by a $3 million tax and you're going to turn around and charge me for this said tax, how are you coming up with that number? Because exactly what you said, nowhere in the language of the bill do I see anything in my small brain that insinuates a new tax is being created.
That's correct.
I see accountability being added. I see, money going back to our school systems being added like everyone else. There's no one that's being treated unfairly or differently. I see the protection of jobs by lack of, by changes that you all have made, which was what got us to this point so far.
I thought that was it. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and I thought, this is great. This is great. You sat down, had a conversation. Jay was receptive. He listened and doesn't sound like he pushed back on anything that was a reasonable concern for the citizens of Frankfort. So you went armed with what you knew, which was all the headlines and the smear campaign articles that have been out there against Jay, and that was their thing. They went straight for Jay's throat. They put themselves in a position that I'm really impressed that you got him to listen. I really am.
Honestly, if it was an ego thing, he would have dropped the original bill on
Right.
the citizens of Frankfurt.
As
He
it
would've
was
gave-
originally written.
Right.
Yeah, he would have gave you lip service. He could have went through one meeting, said, "Yeah, we'll make these changes," and the next thing you know, you wake up to 0 changes, and as we've talked about earlier, with the supermajority, it's passed.
Yeah, yeah, and I know a lot of other people have said, and again, Senator Williams and I are not personal friends or close, but I have had individual members of the state legislature who have given me those cursory meetings, as a general counsel of a state agency or just a representative, and nothing has happened, or you end up with egg on your face because nothing changes, even though they tell you it will, and this was different, and
He put his money where his mouth is.
he did, and for anyone who believes that this is somehow he's scratching the back of a donor or something else, I will say this, just because I'm a total nerd. I went back last night when somebody made that comment once again, and I looked all the way back to October when this bill was first presented, or at least talked about, okay? And I found exactly $0.
Talking about donations.
No, not donations. I'm talking about lobbying funds, all right? $0 spent on lobbying related to telecommunications in Frankfort, Kentucky. I mean, 0. I mean, AT&T has spent $0, right? Charter Communications, who owns Spectrum, $0, all right? So I didn't just say to myself, well, he wouldn't do that. I went and looked. I went and looked at the data. You can go to yourself and look at the Legislative Ethics Commission and look at the lobbying funds. And one of the comments was that he received a $1,000 donation from someone in the telecom industry or something like that. I'm running for office. I'm gonna get donations from. I got a donation from my dad. I don't represent the AARP.
I can't imagine $1,000 being.
It was $150,000.
$1,000 out of 150,000 raised.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it was from telecommunications.
No, I think he corrected himself afterwards and told you that he went and looked, and I think he said, I might have gotten $1,000. And he actually corrected himself with Craig later and said that he actually didn't receive money from an individual.
And if
or his sons, or
Or his
anything
sons
to
or
benefit his
yeah,
children.
if you're a high school kid working part time at a minimum wage job, $1,000 is a lot of money. But in that same exchange, where you say, you mean on I forget the number you used, but on an election that costs X number of dollars to win,
Right.
You're telling me that $1,000 would create this?
I mean, we have people that have gone to jail, for
$200.
$200.
Bob Trott.
Yeah,
Bob Trott.
But that was, where people were wearing wires and they're saying, I'm going to give you $200 if you do this. Yeah. There's no benefit to anybody outside of Frankfurt with the language that's in there.
It's not worth it.
Okay.
You're not talking that many dollars.
No, not when you consider a career, a lifelong career or whatever. It's $1,000.
Just go look at his resume. He's not hurting for money.
He's not.
It's
like
not that.
you've been in IT your whole career.
Yeah.
And Senator Williams has been in telecommunications for 30 years, his career. And so he is the expert on these kind of things. I would assume in the entire Senate.
I would assume, and the other thing that I'd throw out there is that if that's the hand that you're dealt, and he's the expert, then the thing that Frankfurt needs to realize, and the thing that Frankfurt needs to stop doing, is when we don't like something, saying we're different. We've always done it this way.
Yeah.
Well,
my
folks,
little button with a red slash through it.
Folks, that's a lot of the reason that we're in the position that we're at. And Frankfurt deserves a fundamental change in the way that we do business when it comes to government.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, we have to know the rules and we have to play within those rules.
And we should benefit more because they're 5 blocks up the darn road.
That's right.
We got the easiest. You don't got to drive from Paducah to see your senator on a scheduled day. for a scheduled amount of time.
Just wait. They'll be in session.
We
They'll be
can
in
call
town.
them up and say, hey, man, you want to go to lunch? Or, hey, lady, you want to go to lunch?
Yep.
You know, or just say, have you got, because they usually schedule blank time between their meetings. Have you got 20 minutes I can come up and talk to you between? And they can slide you right in on that day.
Have you had the best pizza in Kentucky?
Have I?
No, you ask them. Have you had the best
He
pizza
usually
in
Oh,
Kentucky?
I do. I promote all. I'm like an insurance salesman. I'm
But,
always
yeah.
on the job.
Yeah, and it is. It's unfortunate that
We don't take advantage of it.
we don't take advantage of it. And it's unfortunate that there wasn't more decorum followed since day one. I think that this could have been smashed as proven by you. I think this whole issue, or the vast majority of the scary language, could have been smashed before Christmas.
I don't think that we gain anything in local government, state government, or even federal government at this point as the capital of Kentucky, which should mean something, by feeling entitled that we should get something because of who we are. Because look around us, we've not ever gotten that kind of treatment. And number two, we can't gain anything by negativity. If you want to talk about something, then let's talk facts about the different things, and let's have some reasonable discussions. And you know, fine. If you want to be a keyboard warrior and call me every name in the book and say that I bring shame upon my family or whatever, that's fine. But that's not gonna produce a difference. And I hope that in the future, when we have issues like this, that the community will come together and realize there are reasons that Georgetown and Shelbyville and Versailles are benefiting, because they are working in lockstep together with a plan.
It is amazing going through Georgetown and Shelbyville and even Lebanon, Kentucky.
Yep.
I think
To see the growth
Yeah.
that they're experiencing. They're breaking ground. If you just drive up the interstate, they're breaking ground all over Shelby County, just along the interstate. But you get inside of Shelbyville, on that new road they made,
Yep.
man, it's just growing. Like, they've got a connector road. They're already putting businesses on. We've got the East-West connector since whenever, not early 80s.
81.
How many businesses we got on the East-West connector? Zero.
A credit union, some state buildings.
Yeah, a health department.
Come on, my dentist is on there. Wilson's nursery.
I mean, but
Come on.
yeah, but it ought to be lined
Should.
with buildings like,
Should.
you know, I'd say
Well,
in
I
a couple
think-
of years, that new road in Shelby County is going to be lined on both sides of the
I
road.
think it goes back to, this is the way we've always done it. You know, I don't, and I can respect this, is that most people don't want growth like that. You know, there is advantage to a smaller hometown feel.
The advantage is you pay more taxes as you age
Well, and,
because your population dies off.
and that may be, that may be the cost. But do you want to live in, downtown San Francisco?
No, but
That's growth. They've grown.
15%. No, they got no more growth, but 15%.
No, but they grew to get there.
Yeah, 15% of Franklin County is over 65, which I'm getting ready to join.
And
And when
over,
we die
and,
off-
and over 14% of our population is below the poverty line. And so we have
and what's our percentage of youth that once they get their high school or college education, out they go?
They never come back, the ones who actually do get
Right.
it. But the ones who leave here, we have one of the highest high school graduation rates, but we have the lowest college graduation rates.
And we got a university right
And
in
so-
the middle of town.
So figure that one out for me. But I mean, long story short, there's a whole bunch of factors here. But the number one factor is we cannot settle for the way that things have always been done. And in my opportunity in this particular aspect is the way that I approach everything. If there's something I can do that will benefit everyone, then I'm going to do it. And I believe that the language of this bill actually does that. And I believe that that is how I have represented myself on the city commission when it comes to any of the issues related to growth and economic development and the spending. And I will always have my facts straight. What I don't think is beneficial is the name calling, the half truths, the talking point type bulletins that go out. and I think we have to have longer conversations about, how we get to a different place, and we got to pull up a seat to the table. And right now we don't have a seat at the table, and we can say it any way that we want to, but I'm willing to pull that seat up at that table when it's needed. And
Well, you're at least willing to go up there and pull the chair out.
You will.
Bottom line, pick up the phone and make a phone call.
You will miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
That's right.
And so,
And there was never a shot taken except by you, not by a current representative, not by representative hopefuls, not by other commissioners, not by any other elected or appointed officials within the confines of Franklin County. Was there an effort made to sit down at the table?
I just know what I did. That's all, that's all I can say.
Well, I've asked Senator Williams. I said,
Yeah.
how many of our local elected officials have reached out on this? And he said one.
And if I know anything about Franklin County, is everybody knows everybody's business. And if someone else thought that they had elicited change with Senator Williams, they would have been on every reply saying, "Oh, I talked to him too. I talked to him too." Everybody would want their day in the sunshine.
Their 15 minutes of fame.
And nobody else has jumped up to claim it, and you've confirmed it with Senator Williams.
Well, and I'll own it. I mean, I'll own the fact that I went up there. I'll own the language that came to pass. I'll own the fact that I believe this is good language. I'll own the fact that I've done the math and I've seen how the economic impact to the individuals, ratepayers across the community. I will own that. And when it comes to owning mistakes, when I've made mistakes, I have apologized for mistakes. When I go up and if this bill bites us in the butt and come to find out that it ends up bankrupting everybody, which is impossible, but
Still might not pass.
it still might not pass. But if it passes and somehow I was wrong, I will own that.
At least you've done damage control.
Well, and if it's wrong, then what do?
Fix it.
You go back and fix it.
Well, and that's the thing. Well, when a lobbyist goes in, okay, they don't get it passed or whatever, or it still gets passed. Well, you've done nothing to protect anybody. You've tried not to get it passed.
Right. Well, and they're a hired gun. They're being paid to be there. I was there because I live in Frankfort and I care about these folks, and that's why we did that.
And you went there during your day job hours, correct?
100%, and time away from my family. I had 2 dinners with Jay that was time away from my wife and kids, and those are things that I cherish, and I don't take that lightly. So that's the cost to me. That is time away from my kids, time away from my very busy business.
We're doing it right now.
And again, I'm here because I want to set the record straight when it comes to what this bill actually does. So
well, at 3 hours and 19 minutes, Joe Rogan is saying,
Good job.
Guys.
Yeah, seriously. Even with Elon, he's
right. It's almost 10 o'clock. And I'm really impressed that we've kept over like 8 people on. There's 12 to 13's been on most of the time.
They'll add some tomorrow when they'll listen to it.
Right, and we're gonna. Well, Eric and I've talked about what are they called?
Yeah, reels.
The reels.
Stop.
Yeah.
Where's the mute? All right, we'll mute Craig over there before he gets us on.
Unmute me, boy.
Before we get it on a tangent.
He's on.
But
he's on the TikToks.
That's right. I appreciate you coming out.
Thank
I know
you.
Craig does, and I appreciate you being candid and open and presenting as much as you can factually.
I will always try to do that.
Right. And, I don't know what else could be expected for someone to do at zero cost to taxpayers, at zero cost to ratepayers, at zero cost to anyone other than yourself and your wife and your family who've ultimately paid for this, venture that you've made. So I appreciate it. I know Craig has said he appreciates it.
Thank you all.
I hope everyone else does now that we've talked about it or come to appreciate it. With that, I'm going to give you the last word.
I will just say thank you guys for having me. If anybody has listened to all 3 hours and 20 minutes now,
high five.
Yeah,
Rock and roll.
big high
Rock
five.
and roll.
And Jen may be the only one that did. Just so if I had said something wrong, she would have taken notes. But she is great, and my kids are great. I want to thank everyone in my family who has supported me, but especially Jennifer and the kids who had time with me, and this is eaten into some time even with my college girls that and so I appreciate them and I love them very much, and I thank them for letting me represent my hometown, even as a city commissioner. So and thank you all for letting me come on here and talk for as long as I did, and I know that's hard.
The door is always open, man.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Always
thanks
open.
for coming.
Appreciate you all.
But anyway, everybody, we will. If you made it all the way through, congratulations. We appreciate
Send you a
it as well.
badge.
That's right.
Yeah.
We need a badge of marathon watchers
That's
or
right.
something.
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody, y'all have a good night.
Good night, everybody.